World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
It's just so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the French Special. We are here live now across the globe, and we're brought to you by Gaming Malta, of course, AMD, HyperX, GT Omega Racing, and of course Thrustmaster. And we are live across ESTV, Motorsport TV, and TVM Sport. But I'm not alone. Look at this man right next to me, Nicholas Hillebrand. Nicholas, welcome. Hello, how are you doing?
Hello, George. Amazing. How are you doing yourself?
Oh, living the dream. We are here for the French Special. It can't get any better than this, I have to say. A very fascinating event, obviously made up of some of the best racers on the planet when it comes to sim racing, professional drivers as well, and also content creators. We've got a mishmash of a little bit of everything here today. And we're going to have 50 minutes of practice, 50 minutes of qualifying, 2 hours of racing. It's a motorsport sim racing feast.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, we've got the real drivers that we have. They're not only very successful in real racing, Romain Monti, of course, silver class winner in the 2018 24 Hours of Spa, but also in the SRO Esports Series last year. So it's going to be very interesting for sure, because, normally we have this sort of thing when real drivers first get into sim racing. They're a bit slower, but this time it won't be the case, sadly, for our sim specialists.
No, not at all. It's going to be a true test, whichever way it goes. We're going around the Nurburgring, folks. And of course, many people know about this track. Of course, many renditions of it. Of course, you think of the Nordschleife, the GT track, certainly many others as well. Of course, the chicane has changed slightly since the early millennia. We are here now, of course. And I have to say, this circuit has got a lot of history stamped across it. And like you say, Romain Monti joining the list of drivers as well. It's a great opportunity for the sim racers and the real racing drivers to really see who is the better racer, I suppose. And I would say moderately equal turf. I suppose it's not really, because if you think about it, the sim racers do this for life. This is their game. So you've got real drivers stepping on their turf. And what's the differential like? Because obviously you're a real driver. We spoke a little bit before the air. What are the few main differences taken from real life into a sim rig?
Well, the main difference is really that you don't feel all the G-forces in the sim rig. You feel a lot, through your bottom that is sitting in the seat. You get all the vibrations from curbs, from literally everything. And of course the G-forces just from the sides. And in the sim rig you don't really have that. You really have to focus a lot more. You have to stay a little bit more concentrated onto what you get back from the wheel. Simply because all of your feedback is coming from the wheel. If you're lucky, maybe you have a slight motion rig, the butt kicker, as it is called, or also, a vibration and motor that we sometimes have in pedals, but that's everything. And so I definitely understand how some racing drivers have difficulty to just get into that full-on, spirit of simulation, because it's certainly quite different.
It is, absolutely. And I have to say, it's going to be a fascinating contest. Who is going to be the better ones, of course. And then we've also got the content creators, live streamers, of course, who maybe get involved in a bit of sim racing, but maybe get involved in an abundance of different things as well that they like to share on their relevant channels. And I have to say, it's going to be fascinating to see how they get on. But of course, looking close at the circuit, approximately just over 5 kilometers, made up of 15 corners. Of course, we see a lot of the Formula One cars go through it, GT cars as well. Obviously, a circuit that is sort of well known for various reasons, of course, different kinds of racing. But I have to say, taking the GT cars onto the track, it's never a dull moment, isn't it? Never a dull affair. Lots of horsepower, lots of straight line speed. We're bound to see some incredible overtaking, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with Formula cars, you sometimes have the issues, for example, with the Schumacher S, up the hill, very fast corner, and it's a bit more difficult to overtake there. But if you get a good run through the Dunlop-Kehre down at Mühlenbach, you get a very good run up there, and you can just stay side by side for essentially the rest of the lap. That's what just makes this track so special to me for GT racing.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're very much ready to go out onto the circuit very, very shortly. Of course, we will be heading out for practice for 15 minutes, and there we can see the cars making their way around the circuit here. And I have to say, just look at them, Everdynamics, certainly the lovely looking cars indeed. They certainly pack a punch, I have to say, and they certainly will be putting pedal to the metal around this Nordschleife. But just look at them, well, not the Nordschleife, the Nurburgring, but just look at them whip through the chicanes. They're certainly leaving no stone unturned at the moment, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and you can see here one of the teams that we see quite a lot of, RT93, which is a team that has also quite a long history already through simulation, also through other simulators, and that I've actually raced against myself a couple years ago for a Nordschleife endurance race. Then also H3 Racing, of course, and we have to mention this here. Normally we have a lot of these casual races, and these championships that we can just sign up to, with no matter what your skill gap is, that's what World Pro Racing is good for. But this here is an invitational event, so we have a very selected crowd, the absolute elites. For example, here TFZ, you see that in the name of a couple guys further down right now, not quite found the rhythm yet, but that's Team Fortzilla, that's quite something. Le Mans Esports Series, definitely heard of that.
Absolutely, and just look at them. Like we said before, folks, the balance of quality is just so vast, of course, because depending on what these guys are doing in their day-to-day lives, we've got to impress on the fact that, of course, there's a variance of talent here on the track, of course, many who are real drivers, some that are sim racers, and the content creators. But just look at this, if you look at the delta gaps, very minimal in between the bunch of them. And there's Miliuti now making his way down the stretch and also donning that TFZ that you were quite rightly discussing about, Nicholas. And as they whip their way now through the next chicane, it certainly has been thrilling. A car goes off there dead in front, and as we now see, Miliuti coming into the paddock or into the pit lane. And certainly interesting scenes indeed. Just imagine in race pace, though, Nicholas, that chicane can be very treacherous.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Of course, it's also even more treacherous because this is the sprint chicane, so the one that is used for endurance racing, also used initially for the WEC and all that. It's a bit faster than the normal chicane. They use the slower variant of this chicane for F1 simply because it's a more decisive braking point, because you can make a move a little bit easier there. But for this and for multi-class racing, it's always this faster chicane, and making a move there is quite a lot more difficult.
It certainly is, and just look at the top 7. And I know this is only the practice session, but they're literally separated by a second. And there you can see Acquisi there, currently in top spot. Minier in behind as well, just under 3.5 tenths of a second, which is absolutely extraordinary in P2, of course. A reasonable delta gap there, so Acquisi can sit comfortably, at least for the time being. But bear in mind, of course, it could well be a different story. Do you get many people that actually do put a bit of sandbagging in to practice, maybe not reveal their true pace heading into qualifying, Nicholas?
Oh, most definitely, and especially, ever since ACC came along, ever since it gained more and more drivers, you see more and more faces from all sorts of simulators just showing up here, and the mental games start in free practice. I can't say this any other way. Acquisi, of course, he's a very fast driver, no matter which type of run he does, whether it's qualifying or racing. He's a very fast guy. We have quite a lot of very fast guys here as well. Another one of them is, where do we have him here? Kevin Ciclari, also very renowned through ACC, and as we mentioned earlier as well, Romain Monti. down in 17th right now, one of the real drivers. And honestly, this is one of the things that we just can't be quite sure of, who is doing quali runs and who is doing race runs right now.
No, it's difficult to say, and naturally they'll want to test all areas. They now whip once again through that chicane, no stone unturned. Just see the amount of effort he's putting into the wheel in order to correct the steering, and that just goes to show that is the pace that these guys are heading through, as we now see Valentin Barriere now coming down the stretch, and will certainly look to be an imposing threat, certainly on this grid order. P8 currently, he's in the top 10. Here's our current P1 man, of course that being Acquisi, now making his way round the final corner. And very soon will make his way down the stretch once again. Let's see what he can land himself on the board. Santa Marto moves his way up into P2, just over 0.2 of a second. Samada Acquisi now makes his way down to turn 1. And this is a very, very late apex technically, because you can leave it sitting for a bit. It's almost like a blind corner because you do go wide, almost a double bend. It swings you out wide. You need to turn it right back in on yourself and then whip yourself round the left hander, of course, and very testing indeed, heading around that particular S section, now heading down around the next left, and it's literally a case you've got to try and stick to those apexes, haven't you? Because you've got to get the most out, well, the best bang for your buck, really, I suppose, Nicholas.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's also a bit dependent on what kind of car you have. When you have a bit of a longer car, like the Bentley or the Lexus, or the BMW especially, they don't have the best sort of rotation because of their long wheelbase, but they can eat these curbs on the inside of the Mercedes arena. Through those two left-handers, they can eat them a little bit better, can take a little bit more inside. So as long as you don't cut the track, you can get some of that rotation just helped with the curbs, and then just start accelerating a bit better. And especially with that BMW, it has tremendous power on the straights. So you really just have to know how to place your car well.
Certainly do, and I got to say, going back to the manufacturers, of course, Audi topping the billing, currently Ps 1, 2 and 3. I'm not sure whether that tells us something heading into the next few sessions. There's Adrien Gosset now making his way around the next right. He's currently sitting in P14 in the Porsche, and just over a second is the difference from him and P1 right now. And like I say, despite there being some variances across this grid order, it's fascinating to see that the time deltas aren't too dissimilar from each other. Of course, you'd expect the odd second or two, obviously in between, certain drivers, like we said before, harking back to, whether they're content creators or drivers or sim racers. It can all vary, folks, of course. And naturally, we're sitting on a sim racer's turf right now, as we now watch Gosset now make his way down this next semi-stretch before he now has to make his way around the next left. And it's going to be or the next right, should I say, making his way around this hairpin style bend. This being, of course, the Dunlop curve before he reaches Shell Kerr next. And I have to say, it's going to be very interesting to see how they whittle their way around in race form, of course. Overtaking zones, Nicholas, where are they most likely to make their moves?
Well, we see actually one of them right here, this left-hander here, very nice to make a move into. And that, given, you can only overtake your rally if you get a good run through the Schumacher S. Now, out of here, this is what's, fans call often the beer curve, simply because so many different German beer brands had their name on that corner before. Now through the Ad van Bogen. And, of course, here into the Vedal chicane. It's a very well-liked spot, but as I said here, you see how much later that apex is and how fast you have to take that over these little plates there that are the curbs on the inside. It's very difficult to get it right, but as we stick with Adrien Gosset here, making his way down to turn 1, it's actually one of the most beloved spots. When the track actually got remodeled back in 2001, 2002, Hans-Joachim Stuck, so German racing legend, actually said this is the most exciting corner of the entire circuit, simply because it just goes down a little bit, you go through that kink, and you just have to look, well, where am I going to take this when I head down into this corner with around 20 to 30 cars around me?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a true test, but just looking back now, Romain Monti now making his way through the classifications. He's now only just under 0.6 of a second off the leader, and I've got to say the Audi's looking more comfortable around this track. Of course, like we said before, they were top 3. I will say that that was actually changed rather quickly, though, because Piffer is now up into P3 for the Lexus team, and then further up is the Porsche of Masoud as well, who's currently up in P2, and he's within 1/10 of a second, so the deltas are crashing down right now, which is amazing to see. Obviously, we're starting to see some of the true pace, I think, of a few of the drivers here in practice. Whether we've seen it all, I'm not quite sure, But here's Roman Monti, of course, in the Audi Sport Team WRT, and making his way around the next right-hander now before he blazes the way down towards the next left. And I've got to say, bags of confidence, this man, certainly well-renowned, and we're looking forward to seeing how he manages to cope in amongst this very varied grid, certainly here at the Nurburgring, as he now rounds the final corner. What's he going to set here in this immediate time? Comes across the line, P4, very impressive indeed, just over 0.2 of a second, Nicholas, and that will certainly give you a barrel of confidence.
Yeah, most definitely, and I mean, definitely already showed last year that he's very, well, fond of these simulator races in the SRO GT Sports Series. He actually managed to get, I think, the 14th place in the standings, back then driving a Bentley, so quite a different vehicle, but that doesn't seem to hold him back whatsoever.
No, I've got to say, very impressive. I mean, certainly the deltas, if you've noticed, are coming crashing down. Fernandez now making his way into P6 as well, but just look at this. And the second gap that we spoke about earlier on now stretches all the way down to P18, which is absolutely unfathomable. And I have to say, we've got such a vast grid here today, over 45 drivers, of course, taking part in this event, which is absolutely extraordinary, as Fabien Piffer is currently in P3, obviously driving the Lexus, the only Lexus currently, I was about to say in the top 10, but Mazur is in 10th place. He's in the Lexus, now making his way around the next right now for Team Fordzilla. And as we now see him, just rubbing off the curb there. Now, that's a crucial point to consider, of course, because if you do get that apex wrong and touch that sand, that's obviously going to cost you massively in this, certainly at this circuit, Nicholas.
Yeah, most definitely. At the bear curve, on the outside especially, the curb on the outside, it's very often, just seen as the racing line, but just if you get carried a bit too wide, which is just very easy to happen because it just goes ever so slightly off camber. So, the gravitational forces just carry you a bit more to the outside than you would rather have. It can just lose you a lot of time, and that's definitely one of the places where drivers will have to look out for. Much like here now, this little section of corners down into the fault curve, which Valentin Barrère is moving through right now, it's just always, you have to use all of the track available to you.
Yeah, he does, and I've got to say, he's got a wealth of support. I have to say, I've been looking briefly in the live chat to all the fans of Valentin Barrère, who's currently now in the cockpit. We're riding on board with him, heading up through the next left. And he certainly does have a wealth of support as he now winds his way up through this next section. Just look how aggressive, oh my word! Very nearly losing the front end there. He had to do a little quick correction, but that shows the skill of a driver if he can correct mistakes. And responsiveness is very important. Comes around the next right once again. And just look how he's carrying the speed through the bend, not making a single mistake through that section. Looking certainly ever promising here for Valentin Barrère as he now makes his way up towards the chicane now at Vidal chicane, should I say. Winding his way through, they can carry the speed through here, rubs over the curbs, and really does take a lot of the latter stage of that curb now in the McLaren around the final corner. And let's see what Barrère can set here in practice with only within 20 seconds remaining as he comes across the line. And that was a sterling lap up to P6 and just over 2.5 tenths away from P1.
Absolutely incredible, even with that wild ride through Schumacher S, and that definitely, I think, probably costs another tenth at least, or at least half a tenth, simply because the car is just so unsettled. No problem for him whatsoever. A lot of people probably know him as well from, races that he's done with Jardier, so, Jaroslav Honzik, well known to streaming and, of course, videos as well in all of these simulators. And, man, Valentin definitely showing all of his racing experience here, just absolutely not letting himself get even bothered by that wild moment there.
No, not at all. I got to say, the tenacity of him to make that happen. I mean, it looked like he might have got that final chicane wrong, but he corrected it. He took a lot of the curb on the latter part of the Vidal chicane, probably a little bit too much on the outset, but he had to do it because he was a bit shallow on the inset. But he managed to carry the pace through and keep the car going, and it was an absolutely tremendous, certainly a tremendous lap and a great recovery indeed from Valentin Barrère. And we're coming to the end of free practice now, folks. Of course, Antoine Intramontin now making his way around this next section now, bursting in the Porsche and currently lying in P20, just over a second, the difference there, of course. But I have to say, It's been a very fascinating session, obviously having a look at the track itself and watching some of these guys whittle their way around. And certainly it's absolutely stunning to see these different cars on the track. And that's the one big appreciation of GT racing. There's so much variation, different manufacturers, different body shapes on the cars. And naturally, it means different setups as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And not just, as you said, not just different variations, different body shapes, but also what we don't have in Formula Racing or prototype racing. There's just all different configurations where you can put the engine. We have front engine, we have mid-engine, and we have rear engine as well, with these famous Porsches here. And I think it's going to be very, very visible where the strengths and weaknesses are, because of course, mid-engine cars, you have to hold them under control all the time, but they get that rotation that you need, especially in faster corners. The front-engine cars, always stable, but a little bit tending to understeer. And then there's the Porsche, very, very good traction out of corners, and of course a lot of power with that straight six. But you have to look out in the lower speed corners and also just in the higher speed corners with oversteer into slower corners and with understeer in the high speed corners.
You do, absolutely. And I got to say, I think we saw a key factor of that, certainly Valentin Barriere with his immediate correction. And you have to say that just goes to show how quick these guys are going. You need to be rapid, need to be responsive, and need to be on the money, really. I have to say, it's absolutely incredible. We're going to be moving into qualifying very, very shortly now, folks, as you can now see. And there they all are, now out on track. And there's the man, the fan favourite, Valentin Barriere, out in his McLaren. Now, what can we expect from this man? Now, certainly things are going to kick up a notch now, Nicholas. Now, I know we saw a lot of pushing in practice. I don't think we saw nearly the amount we're going to expect here now. What are the nerves going to be like for some of these guys? They're going to be a few butterflies in the stomachs now, heading through this qualifying session?
I think for sure, because, of course, this isn't like a big championship event. This is just a one-off event. So people aren't going to go, I think, all out, as we can sometimes see with drivers. There's prize money on the line, and people tend to hold their elbows out a little bit more. So I don't think that we'll see some of that here, especially since this is a 2-hour race. But, of course, it's a big invitational event. You have some real racing drivers here, you have influencers here, and of course, you want to show yourself from your best side. You want to represent your team well. As we can see here, Valentin Barriere, of course, member of Virtual Drivers by TX3. And, yeah, I think it's just all going to come down to, how well you can keep yourself consistent. And, of course, how well can you plan your race strategy? Because, after all, we have 2 mandatory pit stops in this race.
We certainly do, and it's going to be up to the drivers where they apply them, obviously. And I've got to say, just look at this. The congestion on the circuit is unbelievable. Just look at them all piling up through the chicane. We're just seeing a live feed here, folks. Obviously looking at Valentin Barriere's car, but just look at the cars that are currently around him right now. There's literally a huge conglomerate of them. As now Frank Pedrozzani now makes his way, or Pedrozzini, should I say, making his way up through the circuit now. And I have to say, coming up through towards that next curve, I believe that's the Valvoline curve before he reaches the Ford, and now heading down towards the Dunlop curve as well. As there's Radwin Masoud as well. Apologies there for any pronunciations, folks. Obviously, my French isn't the best, but obviously watching Radwin now out on track. And I have to say, in the Porsche, and you'd imagine they just want to settle in at the moment, Nicholas. Just put in a couple of comfortable laps, maybe set the pace, just get comfortable, really, at this circuit, because Nurburgring can be a very treacherous circuit, as we discussed at times.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, of course, they're not as scared of the GP circuit as the Nordschleife, simply because this is, well, when you have a mistake here, you're more likely to have your car survive that accident. And, it's still recoverable. At the Nordschleife, you make a mistake and whoop-de-doo, after 1 meter, there's the wall. Here we have a bit longer runoff areas, but of course, still, you don't want to make mistakes here. And you can see here with these huge curbs, there's not really a lot of margin here to be made.
No, you're absolutely right. The curbs are really raised, and I have to say, if you're really going to, certainly plant your car in it, I mean, obviously they don't run the risk of front wings like you'd see in Formula 1 as such, but certainly the ride height on these cars isn't overly high. In fact, it's extremely low, so naturally, if you catch the curb ever so slightly wrong, it can send you very easily into obscurity. And there's Christophe McCurr there, making his way around the track, as well as Pedrozzini, who's currently in P7. The first times are now being dealt in now, folks, and Equezy now down in P2, just over 2/10 away from Masood now as Roman Monti moves up into P5, just under 5.5 of a second. So encouraging there from Monti. And there's Kevin Luan now as well, making his way through the chicane in the Porsche now. SDL Esports by Logitech team now making their way around the final corner. And as soon as they make their way down the stretch now very, very shortly past the paddock, here comes Luan. Where's he going to finish out on the track? He comes out, no time set, up to P6. Just under 7/10 of a second. Very nicely done indeed. And a second is all that separates them right up to P9. So sensational lap times being posted already, Nicholas.
Absolutely. I think they're still going to be a bit faster here. These we are running, of course, with the new 2020 spec BOP, which is a bit tricky to guess sometimes because the BOP, of course, of the cars, just the restrictor, the turbo boost, and of course the weight of the cars is a little bit different to the 2019 and 2018 seasons in the simulator. However, the big part here is the new tire model that simulates the new compound of Pirelli tires used in the last season. And of course, you have to look out because the sidewall got changed quite considerably, so the cars lean a bit less on the tire, and also the tire just finds its pace in the second flying lap. So these are the first couple banker laps that we just saw, and now we're going to see the absolute maximum pace they can get out of it from now on, if they can get this lap together.
Yeah, it's all about track generation as well, because obviously as the track begins to heat up, the rubber on the tyres begins to get a little bit more sticky. They can get extra grip heading into the corners, and that's going to really aid them to really land a better lap. Now, here comes Naga now coming through the next chicane and just rising through the final corner. Certainly driving the Audi Sport now, heading down the stretch. And where's he going to land himself for the Naga Racing YouTube team? Down the stretch. And certainly that'll post him in P22, just over 1.5 seconds the difference. And I've got to say, an absolutely stunning shot there as Tremontine lands himself in P3 as well, just over 4 of a second. But Masood is still currently on top spot. Equezy in behind him as well. He's got a little bit closer. He's 1.5 away. But Valentin Barriere up into P5 as well. And I want to get your predictions as well at home there, folks. If you have your predictions, who do you think is going to be on pole position come the end of this qualifying session? Any thoughts from you, Nicholas, based on what we've seen so far?
Absolutely difficult question, and of course, I've basically raced half of these guys here on track, and especially the guys in the top 10 at the moment. It's a very difficult guess.
If anyone knows, you know, surely, don't you?
Well, the thing is, we have Kevin Seclari currently in 9th, and I would wager to guess because overall the McLaren 720S, it's a difficult car to get 100% right. So at Silverstone, for example, it's an absolutely unbeatable car, but come over here to the Nurburgring and we can already see, Porsche, Audi, they are absolutely at home here, quite literally. And so I would be very, very hard to guess who would get pole here. But of course, Masood, Equezy, Seclari, of course, Monti from the real drivers as well, and Santamato. And of course, Valentin Barriere here. They're all excellent drivers, not to, put down the other drivers. I've just, I've raced against them firsthand. I don't know, their racecraft, their one-lap pace, it's all absolutely top-notch. So I'd be absolutely hard-pressed to guess who will have the last laugh here.
Well, I got to say, Roman Monti with a very good time, nestling himself up into P6. And he's only just under 0.3 of a second away from Masood, who's still currently up in top spot. Here comes Valentin Barriere. Round the final corner now, down the stretch, currently P9, about to come across the line now, Valentin, and he pops himself on P1! Absolutely brilliant there from Valentin Barriere, and sets himself in just under half a tenth of a second indeed. Tremendous stuff there from the man in the McLaren, and he's bound to be delighted with that. You can imagine the chat's going to go absolutely wild with that one, Nicholas.
Absolutely. 153.355, very good lap time, especially considering the absolutely boiling track temperature at the moment of 34 degrees Celsius. The McLaren has some difficulty at the higher temperature ranges, so absolutely stunning lap from him, and he can be very happy with that.
Can indeed, and I have to say, certainly doing the business for his fans, that's for sure. There's Johan Ufella making his way now up through the next right-hander, going through Dunlop Curve. And I can't wait to see the cars whittling their way around this in the race, because obviously that is where you may see a couple of overtakes. See, now whittles his way up through Shell Curve now, up through towards the RTL. And just look at them, absolutely prosaic. And Johan doing an exceptional job here. Currently in P11, just outside the top 10, but he's level in terms of time with Sinclairi, who's currently in P10. Nothing separates them at all. The gap thinner than a fly's eyelash right now, as you now see him winding out his way through the curves now. And I have to say, he's really chucking the car around this track. You have to do exactly that if you want to get the most out of this track, as he now makes his way in the Lexus into the chicane now at the Vidal, and as he makes his way through and keeps it steady there, heads his way out very top heavy. I would say these BMW cars just rounding the next right-hander, or should I say the Lexus cars now rounding out onto the straight now, across the line very shortly. Ufella, is he going to improve? I believe he might just do so. It's not enough though. P11 is where he remains.
Yeah, very disappointing there. A bit too much into the last corner. That's also one of the things that is so difficult. You want to take all of the exit curb out of the chicane, but just braking on there, getting off the curb while still braking. Some cars deal with it better than others, but overall not the best idea. But I just have to say, right now, BOP being shown to work brilliantly. First 4 cars, so the top 2 rows that we have for our grid, also almost within 1/10 of a second with 4 different cars.
Absolutely. And here comes Radouin Masood now. He's going to be licking his wounds after being dispatched. He's just under half for 10th behind Barriere, as we said before, but he's coming across the line now. Can he go quicker? Here comes, and he does. He does go quicker. Sensational. Knocks a 10th in between him and Valentin Barriere. We got a real tussle on here. And with just over 3.5 minutes remaining, squeaky bum time here in qualifying, folks, is Kevin Sinclairi, who's now in the McLaren, now making his way around the circuit. Very soon he'll be making that long climb now up towards the RTL curve now in the McLaren. I have to say, he's down in P10, but still there and still a force to be reckoned with. He's not far behind his P9 sitter as well of Luern, who's currently in P9, of course, in the Porsche, making his way down the track now towards what looks to be the Dunlop curve, should I say. And as he does so, the number 7 car now trying to really just touchy-feely his way around the next right-hander, sticking to the curve, the apex, and now the straight beckons leading up towards Schalke. And there you can see certainly the curbs there are so raised. You've got to be so careful. And I have to say, he's literally going hell for leather up this straight now. And what a phenomenal shot we have here, watching him wind through and just see how precise he is utilising that steering wheel, which you simply have to be.
Yeah, absolutely, and just also using track limits to the absolute maximum. They get a little bit oversteer from the inside curb as the corner just drops off a bit too off camber there, and the car is just a little bit rotating too much, but Sinclairi, nothing he can't handle. Down to 3rd gear now through the Vidal chicane, hard over the right side curb, now hard on the left side curb, gets off the curb just before the braking, and now, is it going to be enough to improve in position?
Going to be very tight. Here he comes now across the line. Kevin Sinclairi up to P8. Just under 0.4 of a second. So very well performed there by the McLaren driver. 2 minutes left in this session, folks. And I have to say, it's been a thriller here at the Nurburgring. I hope you're all enjoying it at home. Please say in the live chat, obviously give you tips going into the race. Are you a Valentin Barriere fan? Are you a Kevin Sinclairi fan? I got to say, please state the driver you're hoping is going to take home P1 glory, of course. And I have to say, it's absolutely tremendous to watch these cars out on track as we now watch Anthony Fernandez, make his way through the chicane now, currently in P16, and looking for an opportunity to improve himself as well as he now rounds the final corner down the stretch in the Bentley, soon to cross the line, and here he comes, now up to P15. So he goes up 2 places and representing RT93 Esports, and they'll be happy that he has made some reasonable progress in this field. And there's Alban Bouquet managing to whittle his way up into P3, driving the Audi, the best of the Audis at this moment in time, just over 1/10 of a second away from Riyad Masood as well, who's currently still in P1. And what a contingent we have at the top there. Masood, Barriere and Bouquet. It's going to be a very interesting fight here.
Absolutely. One thing that they'll have to watch out though, of course we're here with a rolling start. And of course at first, while the grid is still forming around, at around 50 kilometers an hour at the end, and then also going up to 70 kilometers an hour. So everyone is at the same speed, everyone is slowly rolling towards the start, as we have one very enthusiastic fan on the virtual grandstands there, as we sadly can't head to the racetracks ourselves. But that's the Mercedes grandstand, I think, at the Mercedes Arena. So very nice little display there that we always get here at World Pro Racing. But as I was going to go back to that point, I think the turbo cars, so the McLaren, the Aston Martin there in 6th place with Dorsch, they will have a bit of a hard time, I think, against the Porsches, the Audis and the Lexuses, simply because with a naturally aspirated car you have a bit more direct power. But of course, they will have to take a bit more fuel because of more fuel consumption. So it'll be quite something to find out as Piffet just goes up into P1 there, just as the time runs out. Fantastic run from him.
Oh, superb timing there from Fabien Piffet. And I'd say here's Kevin Lejeune now making his way around the next right. Of course, it's been Dunlop Kerr heading now up towards the Shell Curve. And STL Esports now have their beady eyes watching their man Kevin Lejeune now making his way up the stretch now towards RTL, going through Bit Curve as well. And just watch this man now in the Porsche looking to do damage upon this classification. P11 he currently lies. Masoud has now managed to retake P1 as well. And I've got to say, literally, just over 200ths of a second is all that separates them right now. As Lejeune now makes his way up through the next right-handed curve now at Bogan. Now up towards the Vidal chicane. Here comes the Porsche. And a very smartly coloured car this is indeed for the Porsches. They make their way through the bends now. Didn't even graze the curbs on the outset. Although he did take a lot out of the chicane, that's for sure. Heading around the final corner. Here comes Lejeune. Is he going to manage to top the billing here? With literally, we're in injury time, folks. 1 minute and a half, or just over counting. P8 goes Kevin Lejeune. And that's a modest improvement there by the STL Esports driver. But seeing Masoud there do what he did, an absolutely exceptional qualifying. And I've got to say, if we've got anything like we've just seen in the race, it's going to be a very close contest.
I think it's going to be even closer in the race because, of course, qualifying, it's a bit difficult to say always, what kind of setup they were running, but because sometimes a lot of these pro drivers, they do prefer absolute hot lap setup, so they prefer the most out of the car. But of course, those won't work on the tires. You will have to conserve the tires for at least around 40 minutes, because with our 2 mandatory pit stop, the 2-hour race, if you just split that in 3 beautiful parts, that is 40-minute stints, and we'll have to see who decides to do that, because obviously you can decide to do very differently, of course.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, obviously we look at various other series in the calendar, of course, when it comes to pit stops and things of that nature. Strategies vary depending on what series you're representing in. But of course, when it comes down to endurance racing, things may not seem to matter, but they actually do. Pit stops are very vital. Obviously, strategies are so important, imperative. And you can imagine that those who are involved in teams are obviously going to be having discussions as to what the best route of action is in order to get the best out of their car heading into this French special event. We're going to be in for a real fantastic one, folks. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure that you leave a like and subscribe to the relevant channels as well. I really hope you've enjoyed the broadcast here, of course, and certainly the initial stages of this race we've already seen. Practice has been thrilling, qualifying more so. I can only imagine the race is going to tip the scale, and we're going to be seeing these drivers go all out, looking to challenge for the victory here at the French Special. But I have to say, the Nurburgring, historical as it is, plenty of opportunities for an upset. We saw a lot of the cars maybe a little bit upset heading through the chicane. And do we think that could be a very, very, should we say, a dramatic part of the track? Could we be seeing some major offs at that point?
Most definitely. I'd say the Vidal chicane and probably the Michael Schumacher S, they're gonna be big drama points, especially because you don't really need another car to have contact with. You can just mess it up yourself, simply because you have these huge curbs. If you hit them slightly wrong, if you just, miscalculate a little bit, because of course this is a very high-end simulator. If you have a bigger fuel load, of course, your car is going to sink a bit more into its springs. You're gonna have a little bit lower ride height. And of course, it's going to act a little bit differently then when it also weighs more when you hit these curbs. So people will have to adjust to everything. And I'm looking forward to how well these drivers will be able to do that.
Absolutely. It's going to be a thriller. And very, very soon, folks, we will be going out onto the track to watch them head out on the pace lap before they all of a sudden cross the line and the action will get underway. But obviously we want to hear from you as well, who you think is going to be stealing the show here today. Will it be Valentin Barrière or will it be somebody else? I got to say, a lot of fans seem to be crawling around Valentin. The live chat was buzzing, I have to say, with the news that this man was racing, and I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that before. But incredible scenes as we now head over to the classification. Now, as you can see them all grouped up on the grid on the pace lap. And now, if there weren't butterflies before, there will be now. Because how important is a good getaway in a race, Nicholas?
Well, especially around such a critical first sector as here, I think you can definitely win a couple of positions, but you can lose even more. I remember during the SRO Esports GT series, I had a bad qualifying for Ferrari, and I basically ended up somewhere in the midfield. Through the first part of Mercedes Arena, I gained around 10 positions, and then just at the exit right here, there was just one car turned around. I tried to avoid it, and a Bentley behind me sadly just didn't anticipate that. Hit me up the rear, and I was last. So it's just so easy to make a single mistake here, and especially with over 40 cars that we have here on track, you can see they're now heading down there towards the Ford curve, while others are still in the middle of the Mercedes arena. I think you just really want to be careful not to make mistakes here, and if you make a mistake, you have to be so careful not to rejoin in a less than intelligent way.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely spot on, because you've got to think that there's going to be a huge conglomerate of cars that are going to be making their way through the circuit, so no one will want to have their race endangered. But I have to see, there's Radwin Masood, who's currently on top spot and enjoying that after a sensational piece of work in qualifying. Fabien Piffert just behind him there as well, as we now have a look at the cameras in the bottom. There you can see through our helicopter camera of the cars now making their way through this next section. And I have to say, stunning shots here of the Nurburgring. And it's such a gorgeous looking circuit, and it's been on the calendar and certainly around for a long time now. And never, ever a dull race around here. And I don't think we're going to be seeing a dull race here today, Nicholas. I mean, what are your anticipations? Is it going to be a case that the leader can run away with this, or can we expect there to be a huge tussle at the front?
I really don't think so. I think especially with these two mandatory pit stops, we'll have a tussle until the end, as we have these beautiful shots here from our favorite drone pilot at WPR, Nathan Mifsud. And yeah, this is one of the nice things here as well. We can just see this wonderful shot that we normally don't get to see. But yeah, as I said, it's going to be a tussle till the end, especially for the first corner. It's not abnormal to see 4 wide entering into that. And even then, you know, you can still stay 3 wide through basically the entirety of the Mercedes arena. So people really have to look out how to pick their fights.
Yeah, they will. And you can now see them slowing down steadily as they now wind them up. Just look at that. And looking in the bottom screen, you can see the excellent piloting of the drone camera by Nathan Mifsud as well. So well done to you, sir. Excellent stuff indeed, as they now wind their way out of the chicane. And very shortly we'll be seeing them put pedal to the metal, and we will soon be go here at the Nürburgring as they all line up here. And brace yourselves, folks, ladies and gentlemen at home. I hope you're all enjoying the coverage here. And we're very much ready to get underway. Here is Masoud, Piffert alongside him, behind Valentin Barrière as well. In behind Bouquet, Ukwizi watching him in the midst too as they cross the line and they put pedal to the metal. It's green flag. It's go. And look at this. By the looks of it, you can see a white car there on the left-hand side. Masoud, though, still in front. Fair. Valentin Barrière as well, just stuck in behind the 3 cars. They round through turn 1, but still on top. It's Radwin Masoud, who's still on top spot, in behind as well. And Fabien Piffert, as well as Valentin Barrière. A couple of places, Bouquet's there too, so is Ukwizi, but a phenomenal start, very clean. They're just trying to string their way out across the track, but look at Barrière now, trying to fight back, throws it down the inside, tries to make up a position. He's currently in P5, but on a rescue. They go 3 wide now, heading through the next section. As they do so, it's literally who's bravest. Valentin Barrière now scuppering, loses a spot, and what was certainly a spot he could have gained. He's still in P5, still trying to whittle his way around the circuit, but extraordinary scenes. He gets pushed wide, and now he's down to P6. Phenomenal scenes, Nicholas.
Absolutely. You can just see how good these guys are at racecraft. No touch there, no rubbing even, as they went 3 wide into that. And now still, you know, completely driving up to the utmost limit where the front end of their car will reach. Now coming up into Schumacher, as now, of course, they don't have as much aero as Formula 1 cars, but still, dirty air is a thing here, as we have Zielinski now here on camera, and that is the Aston Martin right in front of him. That's Sanier, who actually made a mistake there, and of course, Zielinski immediately down the inside for the next left-hander, makes the move clean down the inside, and now the Bentley right behind that, I think the Bentley lost out a bit. There was Fernandez, so Fernandez just trying to make up on the mistake that he made earlier in the lap, and absolute action wherever we're looking.
And there's Sebastian Bretz as well, and he's under significant pressure because here comes Naga down the inside, well, certainly, or the outside, whichever way you want to look at it, and now creeps his way up towards the next chicane, and now, of course, Bretz holds on, but I have to say, look further down, Naga is in trouble because here comes Charmel as he now looks around the outside, the Ferrari not able to make a move, but Sebastian Bretz holding on to that position. Here comes Hamada Rakwuzi, who, of course, was at the top of the billing in free practice. Unfortunately, could not find the same form in qualifying, but still, he's up there fighting. P4 in behind, you can see there Kevin Luan. There's Kevin Siklari as well. Currently in the midst of a battle with Ifella as well, as they round the next left-hander. A little bit of touching there. And indeed, you'd expect a lot of that. It's almost like touring car in that aspect, as now Kevin Siklari rounds the next right-hander for Racing Line Motorsport. They'll be delighted that he's got away cleanly and certainly battling in amongst this field as the train of cars whittle their way through. Such a long train indeed. The battles have been plentiful as we go wheel to wheel again, Nicholas.
Absolutely, but one thing that I've just seen, Roman Monti and a couple of other drivers, I think Santamato and someone else, they all went to the pits already, did their first mandatory pit stop. So that is quite interesting here. We see all these cars here, of course, and they're all battling, they're all fighting, all holding each other up a little bit. So maybe these guys, Roman Monti, Santamato, and I think that's the car with the number 78 there. So I sadly can't quite sort that to a name at the moment. Those 3 guys immediately just thinking, well, these guys can have fun battling, and maybe even if it's the more boring thing to do, you know, it's going to be the smarter thing to do, because they just don't have anyone holding them up and already got one of the mandatory pit stops out of the way.
Yeah, and there's one of them. There's Arno Santamato, who's currently down in the midst of 41 or 41st position, around in the next round. Now, there's Radouin Massoud, of course, who's still leading the contingent around. Fabien Pifer has not left his rear wing as they round the final corner now to commence yet another lap. And as they whittle their way through, still a long way to go, of course, in this race. We've got a whole 2-hour event here for you folks, so do not go away. Plenty of action to be had here, and certainly the leaders very closely tight together as they come down towards turn 1. Massoud there, as we now look at a replay now. And there's Antoine Fleury, who goes wheel to wheel. And I believe that's Damien Fuller there, heading up through. And it looks like Fleury, who's now gone wheel to wheel, maybe in a slight bit of touch. You know, he's okay. Oh, no, he has gone for a spin. He has gone for a spin, shall I say. He's gone off the track, manages to recover, but just look at that. In the space of no time at all, loses and drops all the way down the field. As now we're back on board with Massoud, who's now under pressure here from Pifer. They're going wheel to wheel now, up towards the next left. And as they do so, just look at him here, nose to tail. And in behind, there you see Pifer. He'll have the upper hand, heading through Ford curve. Gets it done, brilliant, and now Massoud in trouble once again. Here comes Bouquet, Albert Bouquet here, the Frenchman now, the East Performance Racing Team, wheel to wheel, through Dunlop curve, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but not for Massoud. He drops down 2 places, an exceptional piece of racing there.
Absolutely stellar work, what a move, around the outside of that left-hander down the hill. And then, of course, the gap was open. Bouquet didn't think twice. Fantastic driving from everyone involved, of course. And still, just a slight little touch, but nothing bigger. This is just the absolute perfection that we have here in racing. And now look at this, Massoud. He hasn't given up yet. How much closer he's getting into the corner. You know, this is the power of the Porsche. The braking points here are just way later than in some of the other cars.
Yeah, Radouin Massoud is obviously looking to try and clamber back his positions. He obviously didn't anticipate to lose it so quickly, but have a look at this. We've got Loic Van Ack now, currently in P17, going wheel to wheel with Poulin now. There's literally nothing between them heading into the next bend, and certainly Van Ack now managing to hold on, but just look at that. Poulin is not letting him go here. Certainly looking to make a move potentially down the stretch as they ran the final corner, and you have to imagine the Porsche would fancy a go here as they head round that final curve. Now down the stretch, you'll have the slipstream on this car. The Bentley now in jeopardy as they head down towards turn 1. Is he going to get enough straight line speed? The Bentley looks to have far too much on him here. Will it be a late break here from Poulin? No, he's not going to go for it. It's still going to be Van Ack holding on to that P17, but just look how relentless these guys are. Tremendous racing already at the start of this race. We're only 7 minutes in, and the electrifying moves here have been absolutely extraordinary. Here's Maluti. Jeffrey Maluti now heading down the stretch, and once again those raised curbs allowing him to come through there. That was Flore Barbe that he passed there, and Maluti, bent out of shape there, that's for sure, winding off the track, and that relegates him further down the field. Not good at all there, Nicholas.
Yeah, slight bit of overcorrection, but of course you want to go for that gap that obviously existed there. Went alongside, and then the car which went off track, I think that was the number 012, just very, very unfortunate there, just misjudged the gap a little bit, and maybe Maluti just a little bit too aggressive on the turn in there, because obviously, well, Flore Barbe can't quite disappear there completely from now to the next second. But yeah, a little bit of a miscommunication, bit of an overcorrection, and this is how quickly you can lose some positions. So I think this is also what these top guys are very wary of. You can see once again Mesut right behind Bouquet, now down the straight through that Van Bogen, and both of them just completely trying to hide behind this little Lexus there, which is not quite so little actually.
No, not at all. It's not so little whatsoever. Very chunky, in fact, and I kind of mistaken it in qualifying, as you viewers might have heard, with that of the BMW. Both of them very chunky cars. As we're now witnessing them head down the stretch. Bouquet currently in P2, in behind as well Masu, who's now looking to tee up yet another move, or hopefully a recovery move if he can. Bouquet still in P2, approximately just over 0.4 of a second in behind Fabien Piffer as they come down into turn 1. And taking the slightly neater line perhaps there from Bouquet. He's literally riding the rear of that Lexus car now. The Audi looking to pack a punch here at the Nurburgring as they head around the next series of corners. We've got another replay to show you here, folks. Here is Maluti, Jeffrey Maluti down the inside. And looks like he's going to try and get the move done here. Oh, a real nasty bump there. And he does turn. Oh, my word. A crunching incident there. And Maluti rejoins, but certainly not. Certainly, I can imagine hearts in the stomach moment there, Nicholas.
Yeah, I think this is one of the incidents that we'll soon have our FIA accredited stewards on. Of course, here, if you're checking in the first time, we have George Muscat and Adrian Figallo here, who are, of course, they have FIA licenses to steward these incidents, and I already see what always makes my heart sink a little bit, because I know that someone is about to get punished for their actions. It's Adrian Figallo is typing here on the Discord chat. So we're just waiting what the incident is and what the result of that is, and yeah, we'll see what will be the event of it.
Yeah, very lucky here, folks. Certainly in this stupendous event, we've got some cracking stewarding happening here as well. So we will get the verdict from them very, very soon. In fact, we got word here, instant lap, car number 108 on 30. 10-second penalty applied to car 108 for an avoidable incident. So very instantly punished as a Mercedes. I think that's a Mercedes going off in the background there, Nicholas.
Yeah, I think once again, just a bit of trouble there through, I think actually that may have been Fleury, I think. It's number 17, so once again, you just take that curb a little bit wrong and the car immediately just says, oh well, the left-hand corner ends here, but I think I'll keep turning for a bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And now we're going to see a replay. And there's Hamada Akwizi, of course, who was electrifying in the earlier sessions. He's still doing extremely well now. He's in P4. And oh my word, yeah, just a lot of oversteer. I think he just snapped the steering. And the Audi now spinning off and onto the track. Luckily enough, he didn't go too deep and had the and certainly had the foresight to reverse the car backwards just to avoid any potential contacts. Oh my word, another spin. And that's certainly going to damage his prospects in the initial stage of this race. And we spoke about that chicane, Nicholas. It's really, really dangerous, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's just, you overcook it a little bit into it. And, well, you're instantly going to burn yourself, so to say, to keep it in cooking terms. But yeah, very good car control for him to keep it as it was when he rejoined the track, because that was just after the turning point, so just barely off the racing line. Very well handled from him. But the big issue that he had there, then, you know, a bit too aggressive on the throttle. The traction control can't quite control all of it. And that's where he lost most of his time. So sadly, now at the end of this very long train, and this is going to be another recovery drive for him.
Yeah, stewards are obviously also updating us now. Car number on lap 1 incident, car number 888 on 108. 5-second penalty for car number 888 for an avoidable incident. As we now watch Masu once again letting fly at Bouquet. And of course, 0.4 of a second separates Fabien Pifer and Bouquet. But just look at Masu, because all the time, while Bouquet and Pifer are battling each other, it is opening the door for Radouin Mousser, who's now currently making his way down the stretch once again. And certainly the Porsche looking to maybe try and clamber. Just look at Bouquet there, having a little cheeky look down the inside of Pifer. Can he find a move? Not this time, but look at the, he's gone in deep to try and get a nice, certainly a nice switchback potentially from Masu. But he did have a little nose there. And it's interesting to see, certainly, none of the top 3 cars leaving each other with any sleep right now. They're literally going for it here and really looking to try and take that P1 spot.
Absolutely, and what I find really interesting right now is you see that gap from Mesut to Leon in P4, that is 3.2 seconds, so normally, even though we have a 3-way fight going on, you know, and moves going on everywhere, well, there's 2 types of battle, which we can always see in racing. It's one that slows everyone down, and then there's one that, you know, somehow these guys just motivate each other to just keep going faster and faster, and I think this is the kind of battle that we're seeing right now. The gap actually going up to 3.3 seconds now as they're still fighting.
Yeah, they are, and I got to say, got a bit of hair of scaring there. Zielinski was certainly nearly took a tumble off the track there, but there's Lucas Sagnier, who's currently in P13, currently got Mazur in P12 ahead of him, and we're now watching them pull their way through this next section of bend. We've also got the view from the top of the billing in behind, as we now see Masu having a nose there as well. There's Nico Paulin off the track as well, P17, and he'll soon be relegated further down the table, off the track and in the grass. And just look at that, the conglomerate of cars now passing him is Bouquet now holding on to P2. And there's Michael Mizur, who's now going to be at the mercy of Lucas Sagnier, who's currently at P13 and potentially looking to make a move. Ufella and Kuhn now also going wheel to wheel now as Kuhn tries to defend here from Ufella as they come up through the chicane. Oh my word! And Kuhn in the Porsche goes off the track, and that will allow Ufella to take the advantage here into P10. And excellent foresight there from the Lexus, finds his way through, just utilised his moves behind the Porsche so well. And now Ufella holds on to that P10 spot. Kuhn down to P11. Phenomenal scenes there, Nicholas.
Well, very well held from him overall, and that is underestimating the power of his Aston Martin and overestimating the ability of the traction control. But yeah, Mazur also very good judgment not to go for that gap that did not exist very much. But yeah, what a scene.
Yeah, it truly was. There's Nico Paulin as well. And I've got to say, remember, he took a tumble off the track. It was a lovely move heading out of Dunlop and heading up the stretch now for H3 Racing. Oh, a nudge in the back there from Flore. I'm not sure if that was Flore Barbe there. I think he took a little bit of a nose from, but that's what caused him to spin off the track. And obviously not his fault, I would think, on that basis, and certainly a nudge in the back causing that spin. But there's Lucas Sagnier now, who's at the mercy of Bills here, or certainly Navarro. Sagnier now down into P22, or down 23. The time tell is actually 28th in the classifications. And already you can see the time penalties applied across the grid order as well in our leaderboard. There is Vincent Granier, who's got 10 seconds applied to his time. And certainly that'll be a penalty that he will receive. In behind, he's got Salin as well. And in front, Kupani Price as well, who's currently in P25, and he's got a penalty as well. So I have to say, the penalty's still being applied at this early stage. We're only 15 minutes in, and still a long way to go, folks.
Yeah, I think even with these penalties applied already, people with more common knowledge of ACC, they already know these penalties will be applied at the next pit stop. So some people here, if they receive these penalties, they may have to rethink their strategy just a tiny bit, because of course 2 hours, this is basically 2 1-hour stints. Normally these tires have their peak at the end of 1 hour. After that it's going slower and slower and slower, so at least one tire stop is what you want to have here. And maybe this is your motivation to, instead of having 2 tire stops, you know, to just have one of them and serve your penalty instead in one of them.
Yeah, well, there's Zielinski now. Remember, we saw a battle there. He lost the rear end there slightly, and that could potentially allow Kuhn to make a move here as they come out now, heading down the stretch. And this is out of Valvoline curve, as we now see Josef Kapani-Price now making his way around this next section, down towards the next left, trying to go wheel to wheel here with what looks to be, I think, is that Vincent Grenier there in behind him, I have to say, or now in front of him indeed. And Vincent Grenier is now up into P25, so gets the move done in the Bentley and separated by a mere, I believe, 0.2 of a second, so nothing separates them, but certainly the battles will be certainly lighting up here at the Nurburgring. But those two have been certainly laying down exchanges on each other now for quite some time. Zielinski coming around the next left in behind. Kuhn as well, trying to garner a little bit of speed as well, a bit of straight line speed that can potentially open the door for a potential overtake as they wind through the next left. And certainly all strung together. There you can see Fernandez just watching them in the midst. And certainly that's exactly what Fernandez needs to do. Just sit behind, let them battle, and potentially he can come through and take it as they're battling, because that's generally a tactic that can be quite useful.
Absolutely, and especially when it's this situation here, you said it before, you know, Fernandez can just sit behind them and watch them rustle and tussle, and maybe someone of them just tussles a bit too much, and in the ensuing chaos, it's easy pickings for the Bentley driver right behind them. So really something that they will all have to take a look at, and something that is also worth a little look at right now is our current weather prediction, which is at the moment just a bit cloudy, and of course it's also a bit later in the evening in the in-game time. You can see they're almost 6 p.m, so we can see the temperature starting to drop off a bit. That is something that people will have to look at when they change their tires as well.
Yeah, well, just look at this now. Zielinski down to P13. Kuhn has managed to move ahead and take that P12. In behind there, you can see Fernandez now spying whatever happens in between these two. And I have to say, as they make their way down the next stretch before they make their way towards the Valvoline curve. And please also, folks, if you could leave a like, a subscribe, and also share as well, and become part of the World Pro Racing community. It's a pleasure to have you here from all across the world watching this race. And I have to say, televised across many areas. And I have to say, it's a pleasure to be here at the Nurburgring, bringing you some of this action indeed. Zielinski still currently licking his wounds. Kuhn currently in P12. Fernandez still watching on intently to see if any mistakes get made as they come up now towards the next left-hander, crawling up now very soon towards what will be the chicane before they head towards the start-finish line. They've got this real incline to take. And I have to say, it's absolutely brilliant. We've got a times 5 scale going on here, so it will be going to dark very, very soon, and that'll present a very different test to them, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and especially one of the things that, you know, is not so common knowledge as well, the tire pressures you have to adjust, and that is, look at this overspeed from Zielinski, looking to the outside now for the middle chicane, and actually gets the move, not completely done, but gets it done over the inside curb of the second part. But now that is actually just Kuhn, just the switchback, and now the Bentley, just as I had predicted earlier, waiting a little bit longer, gets the cleaner run, and at least one of them is past now.
I think we just looked into our crystal ball there, didn't we, Nicholas? I have to say, unbelievable. As Zielinski now looks to tag back, he's frustrated after that move was carried out there by Fernandez, who did exceptionally well to tag back and certainly wheel to wheel now around the next left. This is music to the eyes of Kuhn, who can now carry on and spring a gap, because these two are now battling against each other, and certainly Fernandez in the Bentley has the upper hand in this section of the track. Phenomenal scenes here as now Fernandez has to sort of creep back as Kuhn flies away. Zielinski, should I say, has now got to stay behind Fernandez for the time being, but exquisite battling between those three, as now we're seeing Laurent Duduk-Price as well making his way through, or Laurent Duduk, should I say, P1CE. I read that as Price. It's actually the team, folks, P1CE, making their way through the next bend. In behind them as well, Charmot is there as well with Sain, and them three are now made up or should I say them 4, because it goes back to Brits as well, who's not far behind, and Shaman now trying to make his way through the next bend, and clocking every move that Dudu makes as well as they make their way down the stretch now. And once again, very shortly, they'll be taking the Dunlop curve. And I have to say, it's amazing to see that despite them being strung out in places, we've still got these little pockets of battles, Nicholas, which is always thrilling to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, if it's down at the 30th right now, something can always happen in racing. So if they just get the strategy a bit more right than the others, or if an accident happens up above, an accident like here, we already saw it quite often with the Wedel chicane, and also especially with the Schumacher S, you can make a mistake very quickly, and if someone just misjudges the situation a tiny bit, we immediately have 1, 2, 3, or maybe even if they're really unlucky, double-digit numbers of cars off.
Yeah, well, there's William Dorsch as well, who's trying to make his way up into P9, and I got to say, fella, a little bit of tapping there, heading around turn 1, and certainly William Dorsch trying to make himself happen, but he's run wide slightly, and that's opened the door potentially here for Mazur to try and creep through. Is there now wheel to wheel again, but still. Currently, William Dorsch managing to hold on at least for the time being, but he's licking his wounds. Kazoo Feller is still ahead of him here. Mazur just clocking every move he makes. We're running on board now. We're watching Kevin Luan now making his way through in P5. He's got Minier in behind him, who's now looking to tap back on him. Oh, a rub on the curb there, and that will allow the door to open for Minier here as they come down towards the Dunlop curve. Now, will he take the inside line? Go for a challenge? No, not this time. He's going to sit in behind and be patient, but certainly the Porsche had a little brief moment there of trouble, and potentially the Audi could have made a move, a little flash of the lights, and just to make him know that he's right behind him, and certainly primed for a potential move heading up to the chicane.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course, very well liked to do by, as we have another move here, very well liked by GT3 drivers, just to give a bit of a flash there to make the driver up ahead a bit more unsure of it. And also, a little bit of frustration. Maybe we can see it in the rearview mirror currently from, that would be Santa Marta, who is not quite a fan of Arnaud Solan's late lunge into that left-hander. However, still a very nice move there, last minute, and sometimes you just have to take the opportunities that present themselves.
Apex, and it's absolutely thrilling to watch. Just look at Sayin now doing extremely well. He's got Charmant in front of him there in P31. Of course, the two Ferraris currently lying P31 and 32, and then you got Dudouche in P30 for Bentley. Luis Alexandre is ahead of those, but there you can see Minier finally getting the move done here on Luan, and a great move indeed up into P5. And that Audi, but he's going to tag back here. And Luan is not leaving him any rest or any sleep. And in comes Tremontine as well, who's just in behind. So we're going to have a three-way dance here, heading up through this next section. Oh, my word, a little nudge in the back. And that is devastating. Kevin Luan off the track, almost a carbon copy of what we saw early on in the broadcast. And Minier holds on to P5. But certainly, you can imagine that Kevin Luan would be very disappointed. But Tremontine now on Minier's rear.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a little bit of a misjudgment in space there. Of course, you have this little radar, so to say, when you're driving and you see cars there. But still, of course, it's not 100% accurate. It's a bit better to be better safe than sorry. And I think, well, the Porsche there now with the number 14, he's going to be rather sorry.
I think he will be. That was a very devastating manoeuvre indeed, and not ideal at all. Real shame, obviously, when things like that happen, but obviously that's racing. We're going to watch a replay now, and this is the incident we just witnessed. Of course, Kevin Luan, who of course went wheel to wheel. It was so aggressive, but that is exactly what you need to see if you want to try and gain places. But it was almost as if the curb was run off. Oh my word, yeah. I have to say, I don't think he'll have a jury supporting him on that one.
Quite indeed. I think that was basically, how did the saying go? If you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver. If you no longer go for a gap that doesn't exist, you're Pastor Maldonado. So the gap wasn't quite there, sadly.
Very, very wise saying indeed, Nicholas. As we now watch William Dorsch now currently in P9, but he's being challenged here by Mazur as they come round towards turn 1, and Mazur taking the long way round, and certainly in the Lexus trying to go wheel to wheel once again, but still William Dorsch doing his best to try and hold off the impending attack, but Mazur has got the faster line. They're still going to remain wheel to wheel as they round through the next left-hander, and exquisite stuff indeed. The switch back indeed from William Dorsch, trying to prove fruitful as they ran the next right, but it's too much, and Mazur manages to clinch up a P9 spot, and I have to say, very, very nice racing indeed. And from the Bentley and of course the Lexus, but the Lexus on top in that exchange, and that is just how key it needs to be. And we got a battle further down in our bottom screen as well. Amazing stuff indeed, and certainly this conglomerate of cars. There's no fear in amongst these drivers, is there, Nicholas? Because of course they need to know, they have to challenge in order to garner any places or at least improvements in the offing, as we ride on board back with that battle. And Sebastian Lewis Alexandre now currently at the mercy of Danucci, who looks to have the pace and lovely exit speed as well. Rubs onto the grass, and that will certainly not help his momentum as they come now towards the next right-hander. Still Lewis Alexandre carrying a little bit of damage on his car, slipping it down the inside. Oh my word, Danucci. Oh my word, not something you like to see there. Lewis Alexandre piling up on the cars there. And again, I'd imagine that is another one the stewards will take a look at.
Yeah, so Santamato, I think his strategy didn't quite work out for him there. One of the guys who pitted very early at the end of lap 1 and now trying to make his way through the back markers there, so to say. Even though, of course, they still haven't made their pit stop yet. But yeah, this is the big risk that you have to take care of. If you just come down wrong out of the pit lane, if you're coming out in traffic, you will be in the middle of cars that are quite a bit slower than you from time to time. And in this field of over 40 cars, that's a high chance. And I think Santamato will wish that he would have thought better there and not gone for that gap, which just quite frankly wasn't there. Meanwhile, Monty right behind him, he will welcome that penalty if it comes.
Well, he certainly will, because he's getting closer and closer to the back of Santamato. We're currently 1.3 seconds the difference, as Romain Monte now coming round the final corner, and in the Audi Sport Team WRT, making his way down the stretch now, and ahead of him Santamato. All that separates them now is a mere 1.4 seconds as they come down now towards turn 1. And once again, Lewis Alexandre in the midst of another battle after he had to recover back onto the circuit, because here comes Fleury now down his outside. They're heading and rushing into turn 1. The Mercedes looking to garner a little bit of extra plaudits here as he rounds through turn 1, but still Lewis Alexandre, he's putting the car in the right places. I must say, he's when it comes to defending, he is no slouch as he makes a mistake. Oh my word! That is different. Obviously, the oversteer caught him by surprise, I think, there, Nicholas?
Absolutely. I think the traction control just didn't quite act as Louis Alexandre had expected. And Fleury, he just can't seem to catch a break at the moment. Just always on the receiving end of bad luck. And, yeah, nothing he could have done there, sadly.
No, not at all. And there's Kevin Siclari in the McLaren, 0.2 of a second away from Ufala, who's currently there in P7. As they wind their way up towards the next chicane. Of course, the Vidal chicane, and Racing Line Motorsport hoping that they'll get an improve in their plaudits, but they've been doing extremely well so far. Siclari certainly seems to be a very prominent driver. Here comes Masu, still currently in P3 after being overtaken by Piffer and Bouquet. This battle has been going on for quite some time, and is that the darkness starting to shift over now, Nicholas?
Yeah, most definitely. And right now, as it's dawn, the sun is very, very low. At certain points, turning into corners, it's going to get very, very difficult with visibility. This is also quite taxing. And then, of course, it's going to be bright as long as part of the sun is still visible. As soon as that's over, it's going to be dark. We don't have a lot of circuit lighting here, like, for example, in Abu Dhabi or Bahrain. So it's going to be all about the headlights of these cars. And I think that's quite something that drivers will have to get used to.
Yeah, brave. It's going to be. It's certainly going to ask for more bravery around this circuit. Certainly around the Nurburgring, when the headlights come on. Obviously, your vision gets slightly impaired. It's not at its optimal like you would have if you obviously had the daylight currently over yourselves. There's Nizar Al Haddad now running onto the turf, and that's not going to help as Florian Barbe now goes past him and got very lucky indeed. There was a brief bit of contact there, but not enough to rattle Barbe off the circuit. He has got a 10-second penalty as Barbe, and Haddad now is literally crawling down the order, and he now finds himself in P17 after Gosse overtook him as well, also in the Porsche. In behind as well, Navarro in the Lambo, now trying to find his way through too. So we got a real big conglomerate in the midfield, but a huge moment there indeed for Nizar El Haddad, and that's certainly not going to help in the early stages of this race. And naturally, we can see that some of the cars have obviously taken a few slaps here. Obviously, the damage is visible on some of them already as they round the next bend, heading through bit curve. Very soon they'll be climbing up towards the chicane once again. There's Johan Ufala, who's currently got Minier in behind him as well. He's a bit slow heading around that final corner. That might give a little bit of straight line speed to that man Minier as well. He's within a tenth of a second. Every opportunity, a little wiggle there from Johan Ufala as they make their way down towards the first corner. Going down the inside here, having a look as Minier not able to open up the door, but action aplenty already. And we've broken the first half hour, and I cannot recall a scene where we haven't had an overtake or a piece of action to look at, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and that is just the beautiful thing about GT3 racing. Of course, with ABS and traction control, it's a little bit made easier in comparison to GTEs and stuff, because you want to accommodate to gentleman drivers a bit more, but also because you have such an adjustability, you have such a wide range of variety, it's always a very mixed grid. It's always a joy to just watch these races, as we have, I think, a car just a bit slower there. I think that was the number 10 ahead. I think there was someone just in the gravel there for a moment. But nevertheless, Ufela finally glad that he got rid of some of those pesky guys right behind him wanting to overtake. But I don't think that'll be for long, because as I see it correctly there, I think there's lap traffic up ahead.
It certainly is, and that can spell trouble as well. Albeit it may be lap traffic, but at the same time, it can become a little bit of a nuisance. As Matthias Kuhn now trying to make his way through. A lot of flashing happening out on the track, just letting them know, just keeping them honest as they come around the next left-hander. And Kuhn watching Mazur and Minier battle it out on the track. Of course, Minier has been right in the thick of it here. And Mazur has also done exactly the same. Kuhn got a lovely exit here. Just look at that. He's just sticking in behind. And there's a lapped car there. He was very careful not to go for the move at that point. But there you can see the two of them hustling and bustling up towards the next chicane. Now, who's going to get the better exit? And there you saw Kuhn going deep there. Oh, my word. A little tap there on the Lexus. A twist of the wheel to try and keep it straight. In behind him as well, William Dodge trying to come into fray as well. But Kuhn might get a lovely exit here. Heading down the stretch. The paddock on the right-hand side. If he can carry the speed through, he might be able to get an overtake here on Mazur as they make their way down towards turn one. Look in the camera in the bottom right, the overhead view, stunning view indeed as the sunset settles here in the Nurburgring. A move inside from Kuhn here, going into turn one. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant from Kuhn, and that is certainly a masterclass right there. Moves himself up into P9, and I gotta say, spectacular. Those are the moves we like to see, Nicholas.
Absolutely fantastic. You could really see two wonderful things there. One, Matthias Kuhn absolutely knew how to use his car to his advantage there, how to use his setup to his advantage. And number two, also the different kind of setup preferences that people seem to be running here. Mazur, obviously, on the straights, he was just blasting away. No chance for Kuhn to even hang on to that Lexus. And, at the same time, way later breaking point, and Kuhn also got so close through the Vidal S, so Kuhn must be running higher downforce than, for example, Mazur here. We will see through the rest of the field how they are all doing it, and we also have our first couple pit stops that aren't from the first lap bunch here.
No, absolutely. And obviously that just goes to show, you can see them on the track map, folks, obviously all littered in the pit lane as Kuhn now up to P9, now letting fly at Minier, who's still currently in P8. And I have to say, it's been a very interesting race so far. P9 currently for Matthias Kuhn, as we said, after a great move there on Mazur. William Dortch obviously tracking the cars in front of him here. Plenty of opportunities, I'm sure, for him later on in this race. But just to touch on this as well, Nicholas, Piffer managing to crawl up as now we see Mazur looking to fight back on Kuhn as they make their way up towards the chicane. And has a little cheeky look, but nothing in the opping, but he might get a chance on the outset now as they round the next right-hander. And certainly it looks more like that Mazur is gaining on Kuhn rather than Kuhn's gaining on Minier. And this will be a great chance here for the Lexus as they come down the stretch. But we're joining now with Antoine Fleury coming around the next right-hander. Now he's got a battle of his own on because for sure there in behind him in P31. As now we come back on board with Kuhn. Kuhn around the next right-hander, him and Mazur have been letting fly at each other for at least the last lap or so. And I have to say, Matthias Kuhn doing well to keep the Lexus at bay, but it got ever so close there, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and that's just one of the difficult parts here. The Lexus looking for the outside, so he's trying to just keep up the momentum through turn 1 to stay inside for the next 2 left-handers in the Mercedes arena. But of course, on the far outside, there's not much rubber there, there's not much traction there, and Mazur now has to overcome this big advantage that the Porsche has and low speeds, which is just this agility of the rear engine in this car, because of, you know, you just have a very good front grip until you accelerate, and the Lexus has to overcome that, and also that it has less downforce currently.
Absolutely, and just you need it. I mean, downforce is key in tracks such as this, and sometimes you do need to utilise the accelerator in order to gain the grip on this track, but you've got to risk it at the same time. It's still an almighty risk, and I mean, we spoke about the curbs as well earlier on, and we talk about traction and grip, and obviously coming over the curbs, especially around the chicane, it's so treacherous, so dangerous as well, heading around the Vidal. But there we can see Dudush in P22 in the Bentley. Just want to say a big thank you to all the viewers for watching this here today. It's been absolutely brilliant to bring you this action here for the French Special. And there's Laurent Dudush there in P22. In behind, you got Sayin in behind him as well, who's currently keeping him honest as well. Half a second or just under that, just over 4/10 is all that separates those two. Ferrari v Bentley. Of course, a very fascinating affair. And there's Minier, Bryce Minier, coming into the pits. So now we are starting to see the strategies into play now, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and I think that's actually a bit of a scratched up front there as well. So one thing that we also have to think about, you also mentioned this, you know, we can see the damage on some of the cars here already. We can see some of the battle wounds, so to say. And depending on how tough they are, of course, they will lose you time, because, of course, if your front end is completely messed up from a collision, you will have less front downforce, you will wear down your front tires more through that, because you have to lean on them more, and also, of course, you're just going to be slower full stop, also interrupt the airflow, so less top speed. All of that has to be calculated, but in the end, you always have to constantly calculate, is it worth me standing 10 seconds extra to repair this damage in the pit lane, or can I just try to wing it and still bring it in with a good position?
Well, you know, again, we go back to it. The strategy is so difficult to call in an endurance race system, but sometimes, like you say, you don't have a choice. If you've got damage, you need to try and get it in as soon as possible. But like you say, it does have a side effect on your strategy, on your plan heading into the race. The 2 mandatory stop, of course, that we discussed, as we're now looking at Matthias Kuhn now heading into the next left. And this, of course, being the RTL. Very soon he'll come through the pit curve before he heads up towards Bogan into the chicane at Vidal. And there you can see Kuhn there in the Porsche. Mazur in behind him as well. And nothing near separates them, just under half a second. It's all the deficit as it gets darker and darker here at the Nurburgring. It's been a sensation here. Just looking at the top gap there, Pither is absolutely flying at the moment, Nicholas. He's managed to spring the gap up to 4.3 seconds. And in behind as well, Bouquet, just under 8/10 behind Massou. So it soon looks like there's going to be a battle in the meantime for P2. But Pither doing extremely well to try and spring the Delta gap in P1.
Absolutely there. And I think, honestly, maybe he is a bit lighter on fuel as well. It is, you know, quite difficult to call, of course, if maybe Masoud is going for a longer run. But while we're just watching that, you know, we're also watching here what's happening right on track. This is Cyril Navarro for TX3 in the Lamborghini, a car choice that is, well, not so popular overall, seeing the entire field, but nevertheless, it's seemingly serving him quite well, now gaining a couple positions through the pit stops.
Absolutely. Yeah, we haven't seen many Lambos, certainly in this classification. You're absolutely right, Nicholas. We now see Florent Lecoeur there, currently in P32. He's got Marmé in behind him as well, but ahead El Haddad there as well in P31. So that's a Porsche BMW, a Porsche sandwich pretty much there for the Beamer. As Florent Lecoeur there coming around the next right. Now he's going to be climbing up through the next right-hander. That, of course, being Bogan. Then before they reach the next chicane at Vidal. And there you can see them just clambering their way up towards those bends now. And as they do so, very important to get a nice exit here. Florent Lecoeur seems to be getting closer and closer all the time as they round the next right-hander. Al Haddad is looking in his mirrors. Surely there's going to be a potential overtaking the offing. Might well be on, actually, Leclerc, because there you've got Mame in behind. Florian Barbe is in the midst too. So you've got 3 Porsches in the midst here. 1 BMW down towards turn 1. But still no move being made apart from in behind there. Mame defending from Florian Barbe. And it got very, very close indeed. But very interesting to see. Of course, the Porsches now doing their utmost to try and tag on this BMW. It's getting mighty close. I've got to say, very fascinating encounter in the midfield.
Actually, I think that's... this is getting very interesting because Florent Barbe is a bit further back, actually. But that is a Lexus. I think that's actually a lapping car. So now P28 already, after 40 minutes, already in the lapping process. And of course, you know, this Lexus... he has to look out that he doesn't impede the others too much, but also they have to, of course, adhere to blue flags. So these are now going to be the very spicy situations because, of course, you don't want to hold each other up while you're still battling, but, of course, you also don't want to give up too much time because you want to battle each other.
No, that's right. You're absolutely right. It is obviously not Barbe. It is, in fact, a lapping car. So amazing scenes here as now the drivers are going to make a decision. Are they going to let the faster car through, or are they going to keep him behind for the time being? Of course, blue flag conditions may well come into effect as we're now watching them whittle their way around this circuit now, round the next right-hander. And certainly as they do so, big decisions have to be being made in the mind of Leclerc, who has got this car literally planted right in his rear view mirror right now as they head now towards the next chicane. In front of him there you can see Haddad and Bills, who are currently trying to gain on each other as well. But looking at this conglomerate here is absolutely fascinating to see as they wind through. Oh my word, Leclerc! Off the track indeed, just got it all wrong, heading out of the chicane and pretty much straight lined it onto the grass. And certainly not a nice place to be, but we've seen quite a few of these already, Nicholas.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, he can barely keep it around, but actually, that was very, very unsafe for a moment.
Very close.
Luckily, good reactions from the oncoming cars behind. But, yeah, of course, you have to rejoin at some point. He did so, overall, I'd say rather sensibly, but, of course, getting the momentum on is the difficult part in this moment.
It is, absolutely. And there's Foudier as well, who's currently in P16. He's just been overtaken by Fernandez, who's moved his Bentley up into the P15 spot. Amazing stuff as the Esports Performance Racing Team driver, Damien Foulier, now makes his way down through the next left. And I have to say, it's been a tremendous race so far here, folks, as we now look across this darkened circuit. There's Valentin Barrière, the fan favourite, currently in P3. And loving life right now. A big gap to Tremontine down in P4, approximately 6 seconds. But if you have a look at this, mind you, he is right in the midst of a lot of traffic. And now that really does complicate things because we saw this briefly before, Nicholas. Now, of course, Barrière is in a very precarious situation because, of course, they're running 2 different races here. And potentially this could upset his, should there be any mistakes.
Absolutely. And I think that's what he's kind of wary about, because of course that Porsche in front of him, not a very slow car, but of course if it gets too slow, with more fuel load than him, he's going to have to be very careful about overtaking that, because he obviously also doesn't want any contact to be in between that, because the last thing he needs while he's trying to catch up with the top couple runners is, you know, damage, you know, to slow him down. Absolutely.
And there's Anthony Fernandez, who's got his own battle on the cards here, and he has got what looks to be an Aston Martin coming up in behind him. Now, of course, William Dorsch, who has been right in the midst of a battle. Of course, these two have been together now for quite some time. Fernandez now rounding the Bentley through the next left-hander, and very shortly they'll come through the next left again into the next right. And still Fernandez still holding on to that P15. William Dorsch still approximately 3 to 4 tenths of a second away from him as they now head out now down this next straight before they make their way down towards the next bends at Valvoline and Ford. And as they do so, now heading round those 2 bends, they'll be heading down towards Dunlop, where of course that's that swinging hairpin bend. But just look at this, the night, or the darkness, should I say, has literally come across us almost instantly. And now the headlights are being made to show here as Joan Cambert moves up into P16, moving on for sure there, who's now down into P17. Matthias Kuhn as well, getting in the midst of a battle with Mazur as well, who's now up into P12. And Kuhn now in P13, once again licking his wounds. Those two have really been going at it during this race.
Absolutely. And as you can see, it's completely dark now. The temperature has dropped down to 21 degrees. So I think... Oh, that is actually a car just rejoining there. Little mistake by the side. But as we can all see, it's quite dark now. The track is a lot colder. So people who haven't gone into the pits yet, maybe now it's a good point to switch your tires, because now the temperatures won't get too deviated anymore. Now you should have it easier to have the optimum grip and optimum tire pressures. And that, of course, you know, if they have, and I think they will have, you know, a lot of these teams will have race engineers here. The race engineers will probably be shouting, how's the car feeling? If it's not feeling well, instantly go into the pits, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. There's Walter Bills as well. There you can see, just as you say that, Nicholas, car peeling off into the pits. And there's Walter Bills as well, his rear wing camera. And he's got El Haddad there in behind him there. Half a second is all that separates them. And he's got a train as well in behind him as they now make their way out and about. And there's a car exiting the pit lane as well as they round turn 1. And we got a drive-through penalty there for William Dorch as well. So that's not ideal at all, because obviously you cannot service that in a pit stop, I don't believe, Nicholas.
No, you cannot. And I think actually, because I don't see a mention of that in our stewards' reports, no. Last one there was about Santa Marta with that dive bomb that we actually saw. That is a 15-second penalty for him the next pit stop. But this one here, William Dorsch, that must be from track limits. And that is, of course, very unfortunate. To enlighten the viewers here who aren't that familiar with it, of course, you have these limits here, wonderful, with grass for most of the track, but a couple of places, like the Mercedes Arena, like the exit of the left-hander after the Schumachers, which will soon approach, there is tarmac there, and of course, if you run too wide there, it is a bit faster, but of course, you're running off the track, you're gaining an unfair advantage, and so, Assetto Corsa Competizione penalizes you for it. After you have your first 3 warnings, the 4th one is a drive-through penalty.
I suppose that would be a disqualification. There's Fabien Piver, who's now in P5. He's made a stop, and that means that Valentin Barriere is now leading this race, currently on track. Ciclari is in behind him as well as Tremontine, who's in P3, Ufella in P4, and there's Fabien Piver there, 30 seconds away from Ufella. But now that he's got the fresh tyre compound on, he can focus on pushing. But just look who's behind him. It's Massou again, Radion Massou, who is currently in P6. In his Porsche, looking to try and upset the Fabien Piver party, of course. Nothing separates them currently. 0.3 of a second is the only delta gap. And I have to say, these two are going to be going at it, I'd imagine, here at the Nurburgring. But Valentin Barriere now in front. Obviously, subject to the pit stops, I'd imagine he'll be making his soon. But just look at this. Look how close they are. Literally nose to... Well, it's literally nose to tail at this moment in time. And Radion Massou, who has been really impressive in the first 2 sessions and the start of this race with his sheer pace. Obviously, he got dispatched twice from the start, down a couple of places. And Fabien Piver has been really impressive as well. So we've got a very, very interesting fight on our hands here, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and you can already tell as well. I think before the pit stops, Piver actually had around a 5-second gap in front of Massou and Bouquet, and Massou got past Bouquet just before the pit stops, and suddenly that 5-second gap has moved down from Piver to Massou and Bouquet to Piver and Massou to Bouquet. So someone has done their strategy absolutely perfect there, and that someone is Massou, who's now on the absolute tail end of that Bentley and now looking to make a move into turn 1.
Yeah, here he comes now, looking for a dynamic move indeed on the outside. He might pull off the switchback if he's clever with it. Tries to, no, not this time. He's going to stay in behind Fabien Piver, who of course was leading this race earlier on as they ran the next left-hander. Massou now still lodging himself dead in behind that of the Lexus. Car number 1 versus car number 66 as they ran through sector 1. Down now towards the next straight, heading down towards the Valvoline curve. Nothing separating the Porsche and the Lexus as they come now towards that next left-hander. Still on top in P4 is Fabien Piver, and in behind he does certainly have the measure, at least for now, of Massou. The gap now springing to approximately 1.5 of a second as they just barely avoid the gravel trap on the left-hand side. There's Valentin Barriere still owning that top spot. 25 laps completed now, currently on the board as they wind their way once again through the chicane. Kevin Ciclari quite a ways back, approximately 6.7 seconds, and he can enjoy some nice free air. And I'd imagine you want to try and hammer home some serious lap times before he boxes to see if he can actually mastermind the overcut.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite honestly, kudos to him. Very ambitious strategy to, go for such a long run in, well, especially, with so much fuel on board. The car must have been driving like a pig in comparison to the others. So, yeah, very ambitious strategy, but it seems to be working out for him. And, there shows some of his sim racing experience up in the pro leagues.
He certainly does, and he's certainly no one to be messed with. Still holding on to that P1 spot. Siclari now in P2 still, and there's still the gap remaining around about 6.7 seconds. There's Kevin Siclari now, making his way, winding through the circuit, very soon to take the next left, and that's at Valvoline before he hits Ford, and then makes the run down towards Dunlop. And there's the Racing Line Motorsport driver, still owning P2 right now, but 0.6 of a second behind is Tramontine. There you can see him in behind as well in the Porsche, and no doubt that these two will be cascading their way through this Nurburgring circuit. What a stunning circuit it is as they round the Dunlop curve here. Now rising up through Shell, and very soon up towards the RTL curve as well. And the Racing Line Motorsport team can be delighted so far with the way things have gone. He's managed to ride his way up through the curves, and obviously has done an impressive job to be an imposing figure on this, certainly on this field. But it'd be interesting to see whether Barriere can transfer this current lead and hold on to it going through the race. There's Valentin Barriere now coming around towards the next ride. Now witnessing 26 laps applied on this car at the moment. Now as they wind their way through the chicane, just look how active, maybe a little bit messy through there, Nicholas?
A little bit, but I think that's also the tires just starting to wear off now. And especially, we started this 10-degree hotter this race, so the surface temperature here, this is around, I think, if I recall correctly, half a psi of adjustment that you normally have to make. So now the pressures will be down, and also the temperatures will start having more of an effect on the grip. So Barriere is now just trying to hold on to dear life, while Siclari behind him is actually starting to fly, and well, Tramontin can't match the pace right behind them. So now it's all about, staying consistent, and maybe now would be a good time to change those tires, Valentin.
Yeah, absolutely. Siclari has managed, I think, to crawl around about 0.4 per second upon Valentin Barriere. In behind, Tramontin has dropped back considerably. Again, 0.4 applied to that man in the Porsche. So certainly, Siclari is on a flyer at this moment in time. 5.8 seconds is the delta gap, more like 5.9, I should say. But as you can now see them winding their way now up through the circuit, down towards Dunlop yet again. And there you can see there's a few comments there on the light bars on the car, of course. There you can see on the car there of Valentin Barriere. As you now see, Maximilian Verdi as well, now in the midst of a battle of his own. Here comes Zielinski. Of course, these two have literally been battling it out here recently. Now is Zielinski down the inside. Magic! Absolutely magic. Certainly, that's not easy in the dead of night. And Verdi, of course, licking his wounds. He bails into the pit lane, and surely maybe he's feeling those tyres just a little bit, Nicholas.
Yeah, I think so as well, and especially with the indicator on, I think he was just trying to let Camber make that move on him, and just get into pits and just wait for the new tires to get applied so he can start pushing again. Of course, I think sometimes it is a lot smarter to just bail out a little bit, until you can feel confident again. Because if you just overcook it, you're not completely in control. It can have very, very disastrous side effects.
It can indeed, and of course it's magic. You just saw the camera shots there of the circuit. Obviously, we're in the dead of night here at the Nurburgring, and I have to say this track is absolutely stunning. And I hope you've all enjoyed watching this race. And wherever you are in the world, it's a pleasure to have all of you here watching this broadcast. It's been absolutely exceptional. The racing has been absolutely exquisite, and obviously, please tell me what you've most enjoyed, maybe the driver that has caught your eye the most, and we'll obviously have a look through, maybe mention a couple as well, as we're now seeing Fabien Piffert coming down towards turn 1, and as they do so, there's Fabien Piffert now, 30 seconds still the delta between him and Tramontin up in P3, but in behind there you can see Masoud, who has not left his rear end. I have to say, he's a relentless character, isn't he, Radia Masoud? He just does not leave his competitors alone.
Absolutely, and just so much consistency from him. Definitely one of H3's strongest drivers in their lineup. And, well, I think he's been looking forward to this kind of race because, well, let's say, you know, we have already fantastic drivers in here, but, you know, there's also, besides from the French part of the sim racing community, which is already tremendous, and they have very strong drivers, you know, there's always a lot, a lot more stronger drivers from all around the globe. So I think Masoud is just enjoying trying to, you know, fight for the top French spot right now.
He is indeed, and I got to say, if he keeps on going, he will do just that. If he's not careful, as he makes his way down the stretch, it's been an impressive race, I have to say, and it never ceases to amaze us, folks. Certainly, and the fact that we're here, certainly covering this fantastic sim race, certainly with some of the greatest drivers on the planet, not to mention some of the greatest real life drivers as well, not to mention some outstanding content creators, as we now see Joan Camber now coming through. Heading up in P14, and behind you've got Zielinski once again in the midst. Remember, he was the one who made the move earlier on. I think it was obviously when we saw that pit lane bail. As we now see, Camber coming around the next right-hander. But this other Audi of Zielinski is a very formidable foe as they head now out of what looks to be Ford Curve down towards Dunlop. And certainly a move potentially in the offing here for Zielinski. And we know what he's like. He's all about making the big moves. And we've seen it a couple of times. He's not afraid to chuck it down the inside.
Absolutely not. And Zielinski now right on the tail of John Camber. So Camber actually got through on some points. I think Zielinski may have made a mistake. But as it looks right now, you can see he doesn't even have the high beam on. I think he's actually trying to, you know, limit his visibility in the rear view mirror a little bit. So, you know, just a little bit more of a surprise when he is able to attack.
Absolutely, and any trick in the book certainly does come in handy when it comes to this kind of racing. It's very much like a game of chess, isn't it? I mean, you got to figure out when you're going to make the move, how you're going to make the move. You know, it is like you say, a big strategy game, and certainly like a game of chess, essentially. There's now Joan Camber rounds the final corner, soon to take the home stretch, and very soon to be rounding turn 1. There's Kevin Siclari, who's now on top. So Valentin Barriere is now boxed. And certainly Kevin Siclari is now going to take the lead of the race. The light bar on top, of course, keeping, well, certainly the track as lit up as possible for him. While we're under the cover of darkness here at the Nurburgring. In behind, 2.6 seconds from Tremonti. Still, Fabien Piffert is in P3 as well. He's gained a spot, obviously, in lieu of the pit stop by Valentin Barriere. Of course, we've still got other cars still yet to box. There's Walter Beals as well with Damien Foulier there in behind, I believe. But also, I believe that's a faster car in behind as well. Is that a lap car that we're seeing there?
I think that's actually... let's have a look. Yeah, I think that may be a lapped car. Bit further back, but nevertheless, you know, the car behind him, I think that is an Audi. Yeah, that is an Audi. That's Damien Foulier, who's right behind that Porsche. He's going to be not so thankful, I would say, to put it nicely, about that Porsche and not being, you know, not moving out of the way. So you can see him, you know, looking to the inside, and right behind him, of course, he has Mamet already on his back as well, who gets very, very close there. A little bit of a smooch on the behind. And, well, that is the problem with backmarkers sometimes. They just don't always do what you want them to do. Actually, that's for sure out of the pit lane, so yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's been phenomenal action here at the Nürburgring, folks. We're going to take a brief break for 5 minutes. We'll be back with you very, very shortly. Welcome back, folks. Obviously, after our brief break, we are now into the final hour here, and I've got to say it's been an extraordinary race so far. Nicholas, we've witnessed so many thrilling moments from the get-go of the race. It's literally been non-stop. We gladly we had that 5-minute break to sort of cool down the voice box maybe a little bit slightly, but we're about to get warmed up again, and certainly as we now see Damien Foulet now going off the track, it's just endless, isn't it? Wow.
Absolutely, and just as we were trying to get back in, Damien Foulet just tried to take us, right back in, so, making the work a bit easier for us.
Absolutely, and it's been brilliant, and I've got to say, we're watching Damien Foulet now making his way through, and gladly managed to get himself back onto the circuit, and it's been absolutely tremendous, I've got to say. The battling has been it's been exceptional already. We've seen some amazing overtakes, some incredible battles, and I've got to say, no real changes at the top end, of course. Obviously, the strategies are being applied as they are. And as we now watch these cars now whittle their way around in the dead of night, there you can see Miluti now looking for a potential move here on Foulier. He's managed to close up 0.5 of a second in the last sector alone, which is very impressive as they come down towards turn 1. And the Porsche is still waiting in the wings of the Audi of Damien Foulier as they make their way through. There's Matthias Kuhn as well, who's got Tremontine right behind him as well. Fernandez is currently ahead of him. In fact, no, that's Fernandez, I believe, in behind him, Matthias Kuhn. I do apologise. Obviously, it's a little bit tricky to see in the dead of night as the car number 132, Matthias Kuhn there in P8, in behind Fernandez, still clocking him in the Bentley. These two have been battling now for quite a considerable amount of time, but just look how dark it is here, and that can really make things very spicy as we see Fernandez probing either side of Kuhn right now. Amazing stuff indeed as they come on the outset, heading through towards the next right-hander, and still Kuhn holding on, but nothing separates them at this moment in time. Literally 0.3 of a second there, Nicholas.
And I think, especially with the Bentley behind you, it's always a bit of extra stress. So, look at that. Slight bit of rubber banding there. So Fernandez also having to watch out there, so he doesn't hit him up the back. But Bentley absolutely not afraid. You see on this wonderful onboard camera, only right-hand drive car in the simulation. And now just trying to get closer to Kuhn again in the Porsche.
Yeah, we can confirm that car number 84, Damien Foulier, there got a 5-second penalty after an incident with car number 15, and that was earlier on, and that was for an avoidable incident. So he's been penalised for that. As Kuhn still holding on to P8 now. Currently, the gap springing out to just over 0.4 of a second between him and Fernandez. Of course, we've still got a long way to go in this race. For sure has got a drive-through penalty as well, which is not ideal. Sebastian Lewis Alexandre, who we're now watching on board with right now. Naga is probing all over behind him as well as they round through the Dunlop curve. And still nose to tail once again. And just look at that. How distracting must that be, Nicholas, having those big beaming headlights in your rearview mirror?
Oh, it's definitely distracting. But quite honestly, for Sebastian Lewis Alexandre, it should be a little bit more relaxing overall, because he still has one pit stop ahead of him, and so Naga in the Audi from H3 right behind him, he should be on a completely different race strat. So if he just wants to relax a little bit, wants to have, a more dark rearview mirror again, then he could just let the Audi through. But I think the racing spirit has grasped him, and he just doesn't want to slow down quite just yet.
No, not at all. And naturally, they all want to finish in the best position possible. So they've got their own interests in their mind right now. There's Walter Bills. Of course, he's got Marmé in behind him there in the Porsche. And Marmé running a little wide there, just hugging almost a little bit of the gravel trap as they head down now towards the next left at the RTL curve. Very soon to be the bit curve now, round the next right. And then they'll head up through towards the Bogan little right-handed kink before then hitting the Vidal chicane. There's David Marmé, still in P16 in the Porsche. In behind him, he's got Navarro, who's currently weighed up, or he was, just under 0.8 of a second. He's managed to half that deficit already. So Navarro, some impressive pace is now going past is Marmé as Walter Bills now peels off into the pit lane. And that'll allow Marmé a little bit of clean air. But surely, in behind him, Navarro must be a great concern. There's El Haddad, who's now got Zielinski once again. Zielinski looking for a move. and currently in P14. And incredible scenes indeed. Coming under the brightly lit section there, you can see the tower lights on the track, as we now see Zielinski rounding the next left-hander ahead there. Al Haddad there in P13, the Porsche v Audi. And this is the battle we've been witnessing for quite some time now, as they come on the outset now towards what will be the next left-hander. And this will be leading them down towards the forward curve, as now we witness Zielinski still owning his spot right now and trying to close, in fact, on P13 if he can. Haddad doing a spectacular job of holding onto the car and keeping this man in the Audi behind him. 0.3 of a second the deficit. There's Matthias Kuhn, who's got his own problems as well, because there's Fernandez. And it almost seems to be, like we said before, these pockets of battles that have really opened up across this track. We've got just a little over, or a little under, shall I say, 50 minutes left to go. And there's still plenty of questions to be answered here, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and of course, if they get unlucky, it's not just the next 50 minutes, but also a little bit above that. So they will have to look how it actually goes with the leader passing the start-finish line, and that is something that people also will have to take care of. They have to think about how much fuel will I need, how much fuel will I really need. If it happens like it happened earlier today with Formula E, with a lot of people actually running out of energy for the last lap. And the same could happen here if the leader, if Pifé or Bouquet or Messoud, whoever is ending up in the lead at that point, if they just cross the start-finish line at the wrong time for the rest of the grid.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I have to say, anything can tip the balance in anyone's favour. There's Fabien Pifé now, who's currently 5.6 seconds ahead of Bouquet, who's down in P2. Messoud there in P3, and the delta gaps are beginning to really stretch out, as you'd imagine. Obviously, very heightened tensions under the dead of night. And as they make their way up now, you can see there Pifé, who's got lap cars ahead of him here that he needs to overtake, and he's getting closer and closer to this one, heading out of the chicane. At Vidal now, heading round the final corner, the Coca-Cola curve. And as they do so, Fabien Pifé will be hoping to get a move past this lap car now very shortly. As you can now see him for Team Fordzilla, driving the Lexus down towards turn 1 now. Will he open the door? He certainly will. And obviously allow Fabien Pifé to move through. And obviously the benefit of passing these lapped cars is obviously it gives you a little bit of respite and makes things difficult for your opponents in P2, Nicholas.
Yeah, most definitely. You always have, well, let's put it like this. You always have an advantage the more lapped cars you can put yourself between yourself and the opponent that is chasing you. But at the same time, the same goes for him as well. And of course, you have to pass them safely foremost and then quickly. Because of course, it's one slight collision and then you don't have to worry about your opponent right behind you anymore, but 3 opponents behind you. Because if you make a bigger crash, you have either a penalty from our lovely stewards, or you have a lot of damage and a penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are all things that can contribute to your finale in the race. There's Navarro now, Cyril Navarro. And he was currently just under a second behind Marmé. David Marmé, who of course is trying to close the gap on Zielinski. He's currently 9.3 seconds as we last checked through the sectors. But Navarro is his biggest concern right now. 6.5 tenths, the difference between the two of them. As Cyril Navarro now crosses round or goes round the final corner before they commence another lap once again. And 1:55.3, as you can see from the timer on his dash, as they now head down towards turn 1. David Marmé still in P15, P16 for Cyril Navarro in the TX3 car, heading around the next right-hander in the Lamborghini. And I must say, for the one man...
Well, it depends. It has a good turning circle because, mid-engine car, it's, well, as some people like to call it, the door wedge Audi. With mid-engine, it has superb mid-corner turning, but you have to really be careful with the curbs. You want to enjoy them in good doses to get the car turned in a little bit more, but also, just not get it turned in too much because the rotation can very quickly become over-rotation. And, spin you around. That will mess up your tires and your times.
Certainly will. And so you've got to be, certainly, have your wits about you. And there's Pedrozzini. And he's currently in P25. He has got Monty, of course, there with him as well. And Roman Monti, and certainly down in P26 and still in the race. And I've got to say, still very much hammering home. He's been impressive in the sim aspect. Obviously, a man who's come from real life racing. So kudos to him for transferring these skills over, because he was impressive in qualifying. I have
to get his first pit stop out of the way after lap 1. So more impressive, well, impressive in more ways than just one. We can see him now at the bottom of the table as we look at the first 23 guys. But he's also the first of the guys who actually has all of his pit stops already completed. So it just depends on now if you can get this completely run down perfectly.
It is, yes, absolutely. There's Valentin Barriere, currently in P4 and loving life as well. He's having a great drive so far as the sparks fly from the rear of that McLaren, heading around the Dunlop curve now towards the Shell curve, where he then crawl up towards the RTL. And there you can see in that familiar blue and green livery that we've been seeing through all the sessions in this race at the Nurburgring. He's now making his way up towards the next left-hander. There he goes. Valentin Barriere, of course, big fan favourite here at this World Pro Racing event. Of course, the French special, broadcasted nation and worldwide, of course. And I hope you're all enjoying your Saturday or Sunday or wherever you are, certainly here in the world. It's amazing to have you all here watching this incredible race as Masoud now in P3 comes into the pit lane. Now, this is going to be an intriguing one here, as we now see. Well, I'm sure we'll see Valentin Barriere go past him for P3.
Yeah, definitely. And that'll be his last pit stop. So I think at the moment with this, with this much time left, basically the last third of the race, just waiting to get that done, I think that's a very good choice. He can definitely just go full power until the end, because the Porsche is one of the cars that actually has, well, as it is written in the official article for the simulator, the qualifying boost mode. And that is what you definitely want for these last 40 minutes.
You certainly do, and they will apply that, I'm sure, where necessary. There's Radouin Massou, of course, was in P3 position. He is now in the pits and waiting, and there you can see Tremontine as well, and Antoine Tremontine, or Antoine Tremontine, do apologise. Pronunciation was a little off there, as the man in P10, now P9, makes his way through the field, of course, and obviously due to the pit stops being applied shortly, I'm sure we'll see plenty more moves, as we now see Arnaud Saline now in a little bit of trouble, because I'm not sure whether this is Pedrozzini. I don't think it is, because I think Pedrozzini...
I think we may have lost George for a moment there. But yeah, either way, I'm just going to quickly take over for him here. Pedrozzini just quickly letting by the car lapping him. Obviously one of the guys a bit further back in the field. I think that was actually Monti going through. So yeah, Roman Monti trying to continue his charge up the field. Actually, never mind, that is not Roman Monti whatsoever. Apologies, just rather similar looking livery in the dark here. But either way, Pedrozzini actually now passing, I think that would be Marmé, who's currently in the pit lane, and we also see a drive-through penalty given to Gosset in the 93 Porsche, so another victim of track limits. But yeah, now we have our camera on him, so that's certainly not what the Porsche driver had hoped for during this race, because of course now that means he has to drive through the pit lane another time extra.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that, folks. I briefly had a connection loss there. Do apologise. We are back here. Well, I'm certainly back here in the comms box. We're just waiting to obviously get the live picture feed back through to me, Nicholas. But obviously, looking at this race so far, it's been a very certainly calculated race so far. Tactics starting to come into play now. We've seen some pit stops. Like I said before, I'm not sure whether I got this out or whether you heard me, but obviously a lot of talk about Teclari, and for him to be a potential come the end of this race. Is he a man we need to watch out for?
Yeah, definitely. Kevin Teclari, honestly, I'd say one of the guys, when it comes down to, having to get every lap perfect, he's definitely one of the favorites for me personally, simply because I've witnessed his astonishing pace and consistency more than just once while driving against him.
Yeah, certainly an imposing figure, and we saw his extraordinary abilities before as we now have the live feed brought back to me now. So we will be resuming business as usual, folks. We are here once again, and very much looking forward to bringing you this incredible live action, of course. Now, as we now see, Ciclari now in P4, and extraordinary race he's been having, of course. He did lead for a proportion of this race, now coming around this next left, and very certainly will be making his way around the bit curve as well. So very soon he'll have a semi-stretch towards Bogan, before he then reaches the Vidal chicane, and the Racing Line Motorsport driver will certainly be looking to try and pry himself a nice positive result. He certainly has his fans here amongst here at the Nurburgring, as he now makes his way through the chicane. A very quick chicane, jutting over the curves, a near perfect send through there, round the final corner once again, and he will complete yet another lap. And currently the difference between him and Valentin Barrière is separated by a considerable margin, approximately 12.3 seconds. There's Lucas Zielinski in P12, and he's got a different imposing figure in behind him there. Just look at that. Just look at those lights on the front of that car. It almost looks like a disco there.
Yeah, the Ferrari, especially with these neon lights, which you can add as an optional thing for custom liveries, definitely makes for a spectacular showcase in the night. And Zielinski maybe have gotten persuaded by the disco driving behind him straight from Italy to actually head to the pits quickly and, well, maybe have some extra lights added on himself.
Absolutely, and I've got to say, just look at this contingent of cars. The lights certainly do make it a very dazzling affair as they're now making their way around the next right-hander. And there's Walter Beals, of course, who's just in behind there. What looks like Vincent, well, he's got a bit of a gap to Vincent Granier, but there's a great contingent of cars there indeed. And certainly the lights, look how they're flashing all over the place as they ran the next right-hander through Dunlop Curve now. And just look at this contingent. We've got a replay here showing this is Walter Beals again, as he now makes his way. I believe this is down towards turn 1, if I remember correctly. Oh, a bit of oversteer, just caught the wrong side of the curb. And that Project Reborn cut, oh, very close indeed. That was a very dangerous re-entry, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I was about to say, like, if you keep it spinning, you know, it's always very nicely seen by fans, of course, but you have to make sure that it's absolutely and 100% safe for not only you, but also other drivers coming around. And the barrier going very, very deep into that corner, you know, you can see it very, very late, this car, so...
Absolutely, but he's just cascading through now the next chicane and coming around the final corner, and very shortly he'll be coming around towards the stretch. In front there you've got Navarro, and then behind Vidi as well in the Porsche, and they're separated by approximately 0.8 of a second. And looking ahead there, you've got the just under 0.5 of a second gap to Navarro, who's in P24, and there's quite a long contingent of cars there heading through. Florent Barbe there in P23 as well. And there's certainly quite a battle there in the midst. Looking at this as well, Pedrozzini in P18, Capani there as well in behind as well. So plenty to look forward to in this race, that's for sure, as we come into the final 40 minutes, or within the final 40 minutes, as Frank Pedrozzini comes around the Dunlop Curve as well himself. And as they do so, there you can see him behind. There's, I think that's a lap. Is that a lap car? That's not Joan Camber, is it?
I think that's our main recipient of bad luck this race. It must be Fleury, I think. That's 17, Mercedes. So, yeah, so not quite so much pressure on Pedrozzini right now, but because of, you know, only a lapped car being behind him. But, you know, also very, very good to see Fleury still in the race, even after all the bad luck that has happened to him.
No, absolutely. And here's car number 84, Damien Foulet, of course, who's got that 5 seconds still yet to be applied. And because he's currently sitting on his own around the circuit at the moment, heading round towards the next left-hander, before he then makes his way through the Castrol S very soon down the semi-stretch towards the Valvoline curve. And very soon to make his way through Ford as well before hitting Dunlop. But he's got quite a bit of space in between him and the cars behind. And there's Barbe now. And Barbe's got his own problems, because here comes Navarro right in his slipstream. Here comes now Florent Barbe and Navarro literally in together. And you just saw there, Navarro had to pull out heading into the chicane. It actually cost him a little bit of time. He actually runs out wide heading around the final corner. So that's really cost him ever so slightly there. And he's gone out to around about 2 to 3 tenths of a second, where he was at half a tenth prior going into that chicane. So Navarro was still in the Lamborghini with having an extraordinary performance indeed. There's Bills in the Project Reborn team Audi, And once again, we're back with Navarro as well. Just look at this, Florent Barbe in front of him here as they come around the next left-hander. We have our notification that lap 41, car number 242, that being Walter Bills, he gets a 5-second penalty for an unsafe move onto the track. So that confirms it there, Nicholas.
Yeah, now the nice little mind game will start as well. Vincent Grenier at the moment is right behind him, and both of them, so Walter Bills and Grenier, don't have to do another pit stop. So for Vincent Grenier, his set of mind now has to be, well, I don't have to catch 10 seconds, I just have to catch 5, because then the penalty will be applied at the end of the race, and that would give him another position.
It will, indeed, absolutely. And this is, like we said before, folks, anything can happen, certainly in these endurance races, certainly around 2 hours. And there's still plenty to be concerned about. We're now under the dead of night, of course, and plenty of variation, certainly when it comes to this style of racing. And that's what makes it more exciting, that's for sure, as we now see Navarro still trying to tag back on Florent Barbe, who's still ahead of him here by approximately, well, only a midst of 1.5 tenths of a second, I would say, approximate. I'd say he's closed the gap quite considerably. So Cyril Navarro looking like a very imposing figure currently on the track. There's Anthony Fernandez as well. He's got Masoud there, who is just I think actually Fernandez might have dropped down a place. And it's actually allowed, I think, Masoud to go above him there. Is that Masoud? I believe it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Phenomenal stuff. Masoud really on the hill climb now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Buffet and Bouquet are actually both in the pit lane now, so we'll have to look how long they will stay there, because Masoud obviously still only halfway around the track. Now is to get around Beer Curve and the rest of the way. As we look at David Mame now fighting, and I think that is actually this time Romain Monti. I think I saw the number 11 there. Yes, it is.
Yeah, Romain Monti in the thick of a battle. Now this is intriguing. Real racer, really trying to garner his way through this field. Now battling with David Mame as they come around the next left. Just look at this. Monti certainly goes to show that he's got plenty of talent behind a sim rig as he now makes his way down the stretch once again towards the next left-hander at Valvoline curve before he then hits the forward curve. And he's still right in the midst of David Mame. It's absolutely incredible as they round the next right-hander down the stretch again. This will lead them down towards the Dunlop curve, and still in front is David Mame, but the gap is starting to spring out slightly. But do not count out that man Romain Monti, because he is certainly not someone to be trifled with.
An absolute beast on track just by the pace alone, and obviously also fantastic racecraft from that man. So really, Mame obviously just trying to shine his best onto Monti, even though the headlights are facing the other way around.
Yeah, they certainly are indeed. Just look at them, they're like disco lights, like I said before, but as they come through the next right-hander, extraordinary scenes here at this Nurburgring circuit. It's been absolutely incredible to watch this, folks. I hope you've all enjoyed it at home. Please, obviously, leave a subscribe and obviously leave a like as well and support us as well. It's been a pleasure for myself and, of course, Nicholas to bring you the action. And I've got to say, we look forward to seeing what happens towards the end of this race. The clock continues to tick down, cutting the curve there. Romain Monti. Surely that's not to try and gain a little bit of a helping hand, is it? He gets a drive-through, I think, for his troubles.
Yeah, he does. Because well, the thing is, if you slow down actually, and if you don't gain time too much, then it won't give you a warning, or it'll give you a warning with no time gained. However, I think he may have stretched it a little bit too much, and, well, now Assetto Corsa Competizione stewards have said, well, sorry, mate, but that was just a tad too much.
Absolutely. Well, here's this man now, Valentin Barrière, leading the race, and he's 13.2 seconds ahead of Kevin Seclari, who's currently in P2. Now, that's going to be a fascinating contest as well further down the line, potentially. But a lot of talk about Masoud as well, potentially figuring at the end of this race. It's going to be a very intriguing factor. Thibaut Florent-Barbe still in P19, and has got Navarro, still an imposing figure behind him as well in P20. 4 tenths of a second, the delta gap, but it's getting closer and closer all the time as they come round the next right-hander before they make their way down towards the Dunlop curve. But look at this, Barbe now in a lot of trouble, as you can now see.
They're definitely looking imposing. So to say, with this evil look of the two headlights, or the two main headlights on the side.
It looks angry, doesn't it? It looks angry.
Yeah. Yeah, now, in the night, getting absolutely awake and absolutely angry there, trying to change the scenery from a rear end of the Porsche to clear a track ahead.
It does indeed, and I'm sure that Navarro is going to be thinking about making a move. He's been now in behind Barbe for a little while now, obviously looking to try and strike an imposition on this man in the Porsche as they cruise and cascade around the next right-hander. Nothing separates them. They're heading down towards the next chicane. Now this could be the difference maker as they head through it now. Any mistakes will be costly. I think the Lambo got a slightly better exit there and carried the pace through. If he can get in the slipstream, this will be a great chance for Navarro as they head down the stretch once again. Can he utilise any straight line speed? They come down now towards turn 1. Is he getting closer? Here comes Navarro now. Is it enough as they come down towards turn 1? The first sector, round in the next left-hander. Still Barbe holding on to that PAT, but Navarro looks like a very wily character, Nicholas.
Absolutely, and he's just not looking to give up whatsoever. At the same time, though, right behind that, I think the car that we're seeing is one of the lead McLarens, so he will not be all too happy seeing this, exciting battle right in front of him. He'll probably just think, come on, guys, just let me through quickly, and then you can have your fun again.
Absolutely. Well, let's bear witness to this. I'm sure it's going to be very intriguing. They're going to be heading down once again towards Dunlop, coming out of Ford Curve. Just look at this, and Barbe knows that he's got a real unrelenting figure in behind him. Of course, that being of Navarro and his very angry Lamborghini, and he does let him through. That's interesting. I got to say, that's very interesting. The Lamborghini caught him on the unawares. I'm not sure whether that was intentional, but Navarro now ahead of Florent Barbe.
Well, the angry look certainly made itself known, and, well, long-term effect, maybe it was this now. But now this is on purpose, letting through, I think that is Valentin Barrière, actually, who's lapping through Barbe now, and now going to make his way past Navarro once he catches up to him.
He does indeed, and there you can see, there in front, Barrière, that is Barrière, I'm not quite sure, but making their way up towards the next chicane. But I got to say, that was just the advantage that Navarro was looking for. He can now utilise the imposition striker now, running off the curb there. Obviously, the car that just lapped Florent Barbe coming around the next right-hander as they make their way down the stretch. And there you can see Navarro leading the contingent down towards turn 1 yet again. But I have to say, this is teed up to be such an interesting finale. Is it the case we could get a grandstand finish towards the end of this race here, Nicholas, do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so, honestly, because I think what Valentin Barrière is trying to do is just quickly pull into the pits, basically a couple laps to go, top off the fuel a little bit, and then, well, just quickly run to the end. And if he manages to do that perfectly, he should be coming out at around the same time where we have our front runners, Bouquet, Piffet, and also Massoud. Actually, Massoud lost a bit of time, so I think he may have taken new tires, in the hope of new tires giving him an edge for the last stint.
Absolutely. Well, we'll wait and see. There's Barrière now, Valentin Barrière, with his very, very bright light bar on the top of the car. And as he does so, still leading this race for the time being. 14.1 seconds to Kevin Seclari there in P2. Fella there in P3 as well. Fabien Piffet, 2 seconds behind him. Tremontine there too. Still plenty there. And Bouquet there in P6 as Massoud is down in P7 as well. 12 seconds the delta gap in between him and Bouquet. The question is, can Massoud get himself into this race? Because there's been a lot of talk whether Massoud can bring the car up enough. Is there a potential battle going that we could potentially see between Massoud and Barrière?
At the moment, I wouldn't say so, because Barrière has simply been doing too long of a run to actually be slowed down enough to lose these, well, over 35 seconds at this point. I think if Barrière stays very, very consistent and doesn't have trouble with traffic, he will have a final fight with Piffet and maybe with Seclari as well, depending on how Seclari gets his pit stop managed. But it will be very, very difficult for Massoud to catch up these 12 seconds unless a miracle happens for him, because in these 26 minutes, that's, well, very difficult, because it's almost a 2-minute lap, only 13 laps left, so to say, well, or 14, and yeah, we'll have to look.
Yeah, well, here's Navarro, of course, driving the angry Lambo, coming around the next left-hander. Let's see him round the curbs there, very violently, and a huge collision with the wall and also re-entered. Luckily, they're not taking out another car there. And that was certainly, was it that simply the case? Just ran the curbs a little bit too much there, Nicholas.
Yeah, a slight bit. If you just touch we have the same corner, luckily here again. As you can see on the right, you just get on the AstroTurf there, that little green bit there. Not only is it slippery, but also just right on the edge of the curb to the gravel. And the gravel, of course, it looks like sand basically, so you're not thinking of it too much. But I can tell you also from first-hand experience by hitting it the first time in my life, in one of my race weekends, it is quite terrifying because it's just millions and millions of tiny stones. So it basically just feels like you're getting, well, it's hailing absolutely tremendous things. And that just lifted him up, and the suspension wasn't all too fond of that.
No, absolutely right. And here comes El Haddad now coming around the next right-hander. He's got Joan Camber ahead, and that gap is still remaining around about 0.4 of a second now. In fact, it's sprung out to over a second, or nearly a second, as they rush down towards turn 1. So Joan Camber gaining approximately 0.5. So that's extremely well done by the Audi, that's for sure. All representing the EPRT, and they're all conglomerated together there. You can see in a list, you've got Mingay there in P11, Camber P12, El Haddad P13, as we now see Walter Beals currently in P19, and he's got Damien Foulier there as well in behind, currently 0.3 of a second. That gap looks to be slowly coming back into contention as well. The two Audis looking to duel as they come down towards turn 1, and there's I believe that's Craig Navarro now leaving the benders now, diving down the inside there. Phenomenal, as Damien Foulier there managing to break through. Very clever manoeuvre. There's Navarro, I think, just rushing wide, allowing Foulier through, but a very calculated manoeuvre heading into turn 1, and it's just clear. I think Walter Beals might have just left the door wide open there.
Absolutely, and now that also left him into, I think, the attack zone, so to say. To Dorsch right behind him, and also maybe even Grenier if they just hold each other up enough. Because, of course, we have to remember that Beals actually does have a 5-second penalty.
We do, absolutely. 5 seconds still to be applied at this moment in time. And, of course, Foulier will be delighted that he's managed to secure that move into P19. Of course, relegating Beals down to P20 and puts him at the mercy of William Dorsch and, of course, Vincent Grenier as well, who's in P22. Sayin there as well is approximately 2 seconds back. Brought it back into 1.8 seconds now, so he's in a good place. Romain Monti in behind him as well, 0.8 of a second in behind Sayin. And as Foulier now comes around this next left-hander, Bill's currently half a second in behind that of the Audi as they make their way around the RTL curve now. There's Nazar El Haddad now making his way down towards turn 1 and bustles his way through there, down towards turn 1, and we've got a bit of a collection of cars here, a very complicated issue going on in front here, and this is the danger, as we've quite rightly discussed. El Haddad now trying to negotiate his way through, a sensational move there to try and break through the conglomerate of cars here as he now rounds the next left, before then making his way down through, out to the Castrol S, down towards Valvoline, and very soon the forward curve, but you have to be brave in those circumstances, Nicholas.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course, it's always a moment, you know, when the car in front of you just does something rather unexpected in comparison to everything else, you know, you just get this absolute sinking feeling for a moment. And, well, I'm just hoping that that wasn't too much of a shock, because obviously you have to regain composure immediately.
Yeah, you do. And here comes Bouquet as well. This is a battle for P4. He's got Ufella there, and in fact, I think he's got it. P3, in fact, for Bouquet. Tremendous! Amazing stuff. He's managed to move up the positions, and certainly I think our timing tower's got to update slightly there, but Bouquet managing to jump up to P3 in the race. He was 0.4 of a second behind Ufella now, and as they ran the next left-hander, both of them in tandem, it might be the case that Ufella might have jumped up a couple of places actually. We'll have to wait and see as things regenerate. As we're now seeing Bouquet now just running a little wide there off the track. It might have been the case actually that the other car just came in a bit narrow as they go wheel to wheel again trying to judge the traffic. Well played there by Bouquet, a little nudge in the back, I think slightly, a little bit of contact. That's not ideal, and he did relegate Ufella down to P4. So a great performance here from Bouquet, brings him up into the top 3 in the Audi. And that will certainly help for the Esports Performance Racing team. Seclari still on top spot though. Pifer in P2, now regaining that place now. If Seclari boxes, as I think we'd expect him to do, that
next person actually who's behind, who already has done a stop, is our former leader, Valentin Barriere, who actually came out in front of Renoir Massoud. So very impressive stuff from him there. He knew that he couldn't quite catch him on pace in the early stages, so he just went with the longest runs that he could do. Then came in 20 minutes to go, and now is out in front of him, 4.5 seconds. And if he just gets it properly and gets a bit lucky with traffic, I think he can also still challenge Bouquet. But nevertheless, right now running a provisional podium, fantastic run from Valentin Barriere.
Oh, it has been absolutely tremendous, and he could still be a factor at the end of this race. We're now seeing Ufella now down the inside of what looks to be, I think, I wasn't sure if that was Bouquet there making it. He made a move on. I don't think it was. He still remains in P4, just judging his way around the lap cars, but you're absolutely quite right. Valentin Barriere now within the gap of Tremontine. They go wheel to wheel yet again, these two. And I have to say, this is absolutely intoxicating to watch as they're now witnessing them head round these series of bends down towards now what will be the next left-hander. Just look at this Ufella now trying to judge his way around. Oh, my blimey, indeed. A little bit of elbows out as they head round the next left-hander, soon to now take the next right through full curve before they then make their way down towards Dunlop. Never, always an uneasy position to be in when you're wheel-to-wheel with another car like that.
Absolutely, and I think actually that Ufella will probably be quite fuming there right now, because that Aston Martin, being a backmarker, absolutely no business normally just, back unlapping itself. But it can also be that right now, it's just a little bit that these tires are giving up on Johan Ufella. And the Aston Martin is just thinking, well, if you're not going to take the inside line there, maybe I'll just quickly stick it down the inside and see what happens.
Well, why not? You've got to be a gamble. And at the end of the day, Ayrton Senna quite rightly said, if you don't go for the gap, you're no longer a racing driver. I believe you quoted that earlier on, Nicholas, as we're now watching Ufella make his way down through the next right-hander, up now towards the next chicane. And Ufella now has certainly got a task on his hand. He needs to dispatch his car ASAP and try and get through. Obviously not an ideal scenario to be in. Ciclari still holding top spot. As now we're seeing Johan Ufella box indeed, so he's now making a change on those tyres. That he did nudge the barrier slightly there as well, got very close to it, and that should allow Valentin Barriere and Massoud to come through. So this will potentially tee up an encounter now between Rilliam Massoud and Valentin Barriere, which should be a very, very interesting affair.
Absolutely, and honestly, I don't know how much longer Ciclari can actually keep going with these tires. Oh well, not even with these tires, but with this fuel load, because he will have to do another pit stop, and I know that he knows that. I'm just curious where he will actually come out for the final last little stint, and when he will actually do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a big call, certainly for Ciclari. He's got to try and find the best way to do it. Fabien Piffet, I think, is actually gaining on him right now, and that's not a position you want to be in. And currently 5 seconds is all that separates Ciclari and Piffet. So there's Antonin Tremontin there as well, coming down towards the next right-hander, and he's got Mazur just clocking every move he makes. And certainly the Racing team will be watching on as their man goes through. And indeed, Massoud and Barriere both go past Ufella there and move up into Ps 4 and 5 respectively. As Antonin Tremontin now still trying to hold off the force here of Mazur as they come down now towards the next left. And it's going to be very interesting indeed to see how this plays off. Obviously, if Ufella comes out, and certainly Tremontin has still got a little bit of a gap to close down before he can overtake that man in the Lexus. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, so Ufella right behind him. So Tremontin now in his little Porsche. Well, some people say a rather flat Beetle. Now under attack by two rather big, not Beetles, but just, V8 monsters, so to say. All of them naturally aspirated, but engine position couldn't be more different. And I think this will now be very interesting as we see that little slide there from Tremontin. Very well held. I think now towards the end of the race, you'd rather sit in that Lexus rather than the Porsche, simply because it's a bit more stable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think especially stability is the order of the day. I think at the moment, and a little bit messy there, heading around that bend, certainly as they make their way round Bogan, and now heading up towards the next chicane. And now it's once again wheel to wheel. Mazur now, I think that was Mazur flashing by. It certainly was, heading the next chicane. Dispatches Antoine Tremontin down to P7. The Porsche had to relent, and I think he realises that maybe he made a mistake as they round the final corner. He's now got to try and garner back here on Mazur, but it was too little too late. Mazur just had the better of him, flung it down the inside into the final chicane, and those are the moves that you need to make.
And these moves, that is just... Sometimes it's a bit easier when you have, for example, the Lexus, which has quite a lot of power. And, it can just basically brute force its way through. And other times, you just really have to just rely on the goodwill of other drivers as well. This man here, he's relied on both quite a lot, I think, Fabien Pefay. But, absolutely fantastic masterclass driving from him. No mistakes whatsoever, and this fantastic move that he did around the outside of turn 5 to get past Renoir Massou in the early stages of the race, just absolute masterclass, and since then not a foot put wrong.
No, and that's a testament to his performance. He's now in P2 and only 3.2 seconds behind Seclari. There's Joan Camber, who's got the problems of that car zone at the moment. There you can see Al-Haddad just in behind, just currently over 0.4 of a second, the delta, and that's all that separates them. Looking further up though, let's not forget Masoud has managed to claw back a gap here on Valentin Barrière. It's got extremely close now. They're down to 1.2, and I think that gap has come closer again as they make their way down the stretch. He has brought it in by 0.2 of a second, so we are going to see it here, folks. Barrière versus Massou as they come down towards turn 1, and there is Valentin Barrière's car in behind as well, Massou, and I think it's all because I think Barrière has just come into a line of traffic.
I think also because of that, but I think also because Masoud actually went for that gamble with new tires towards the end, just so he can do the maximum attack at the end. And maybe Valentin Barrière, with older tires, it will be a bit more troublesome now.
It certainly will be. You're absolutely right. And obviously Massou now, with the benefit of fresh rubber, can obviously push it a little bit harder. We've got just over 13 minutes remaining, folks. We are literally coming down towards the final segment of this race. It's been absolutely incredible here at the Nurburgring. And there you can see the spectator in the bottom right-hand corner waving his flag enthusiastically at the sight of these cars coming across the line. And absolutely tremendous. Obviously, like you quite rightly said, Nicholas, you can't have fans there in real life, but we can bring the virtual fans out. And that's exactly what we like to see here at the Nurburgring, as we're now seeing Valentin Barrière getting... he's certainly got something to be troubled with now, because Masoud is getting closer. He's actually breached the second gap now. He's into the 7/10 mark. So very shortly we're going to see this contest here in the dying moments of this race. Sparks flying here as we now witness these cars now make their way through. There is Redouane Massou, who is now trying to close his gap now on the Valentin Barrière. Barrière's got problems here because he's got literally two cars. He manages to overtake one of them as they head through the chicane. Very well done indeed by Barrière. Had to take his chance. He knew that Masoud was coming, but crucially sticks the car in between the pair of them.
Absolutely. And not only is that just, another lapping incident there, there's Romain Monti against Vincent Grenier, so those two were battling as well. Luckily now, actually, Valentin Barrière, either knowingly or unknowingly, actually helped out Romain Monti as well, simply because he put his car in between the two, and now secured that battle, just as Vincent Grenier is securing his battle against Renan Masoud.
Absolutely. Well, let's just sit in, folks. Sit in and watch this certain battle unfold. There you can see Masoud there in P5. He's literally crawling and literally trying to pull his way through to try and close up on Valentin Barrière as they come down towards the next straight, of course, before they reach the next left-hander, this being, of course, the Valvoline curve down towards Ford, and very shortly into the Dunlop. And there you can see Valentin's car getting so close. Now, almost you can see that lime green rear wing getting really, really close to the front end of Redouane Massou as they come down towards Dunlop curve. Once again, sparks flying and going wide there slightly, I think, did Valentin Barrière, and this could open the door. This could be the opportunity that Massou has been waiting for. He sees that the tyres may not be feeling too good on Valentin's car right now as they make the climb up now towards what will be the chicane very, very shortly. But first they've got to undertake the RTL curves before they reach the bit curve. And as they do so, just look at this contingent of cars electrifying their way through this circuit here at Nürburgring. What are we going to see here, Nicholas?
Honestly, I cannot tell you, because at the moment, both of them are kind of at the end of their tire life. Seclari now heads into the pit, so he will get out of the calculation now, so he does last final pit stop, quickly splash and dash, and that's Masood just on the absolute edge of the track and the grass, just barely able to hold on. And of course, that'll also get his tires dirty, so it'll diminish his traction, as we can see here. Barrier gets a bit of breathing room once again, but that was very, very close.
You can see that Masood is really pushing here. He's really pushing. He wants to take a chunk out of Valentin Barriere, and he's getting closer all the time. That one mistake, it was a let-off. He is still in this race. Further up, you can see there Kevin Seclari as well, gaining on Bouquet as well for that P2 spot. Still Fabien Piffet having the drive of his life, holding on to that P1 spot. Just look at this though. Masood still gaining on Valentin Barriere. This is going to be a fight for the ages, folks, here. We're coming into the final 10 minutes of this race at the Nurburgring as they come down now towards the next left-hander. Just this, the lime green and blue facing off against this silver and orange car as they round the next right-hander once again down towards Dunlop. It's going to be an interesting one, this one, separated by a mere half a second. That is all there is, folks, as they come down towards this hairpin bend. Masood has certainly got something in the offing here as Kevin Seclari. Is that a box there? Has he boxed there?
I think he's pretty much boxed. He can't quite get past Monty, but at the same time, he's not really holding him up. I think this is just the extent of the grip that is...
Blimey! A serious mistake by Valentin Barriere. Open the door there. Certainly for Masood, who's managed to go past. He just ran onto the curb, lost traction, and certainly with him suffering a mighty oversteer down it. I've got to say, Masood had to do his utmost to certainly spring the reactions, get past him, and it was very crucial. And all of that has allowed Masood to fly through now, and now he's up into P3 of the race. Valentin Barriere relegated to P4. A key moment in the ending of this race here.
Now my question is it a commentator's curse if I announce it as it happens, or is it a commentator's curse? Is it not anymore at that point?
I'll cleanse it. It's not a curse. It's not a curse. Don't worry.
But yeah, as we can see here, comes up, and he was just on the edge of the grip there, and there's that moment again with gravel, just a little bit too much, and the rear end just gets loose. Fantastic car control from him, but of course, Masood, he'll take the gap that is open there. But I think that he also just doesn't want to quite quit yet. But now both of them through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting race, certainly, to say the least. And I've got to say credit to Barriere on recovering the car and certainly keeping it on the track. He's not out of it, though. He's still within half a second of Masood. And Masood could very easily make a mistake, too. It's very much that is certainly the case here at the Nürburgring. Obviously, looking further in amongst this field, of course, Bouquet still holding on to that P2 spot. Masood's currently 20.5 seconds back. So this is very much a battle for the P3 and the final spot on the podium as well. In behind, you can see the cars obviously in abundance following this train here in between Masood and Barriere. But of course now I think it is how it is right now. Masood seems to be gaining a lot of time, and he's managed to spring up to 0.8 of a second, which has been extraordinary, I have to say, and certainly that just goes to show the difference in tyre life, I think, Nicholas, going back to your point earlier on.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is well known that the McLaren is one of the cars, well, much like the Porsche actually, that likes to just eat through tyres, and well, at this point, doing a longer run has worked to the disadvantage of Valentin Barriere, even though he's still holding on there. So I think, just having gotten this little moment out of his system, obviously proven once again, his car control is absolutely excellent. Now he's just trying to get back into the rhythm and try to get closer to Renault Masood again.
Yeah, absolutely. Fabien Piffet currently still owning top spot. 4 seconds is all that separates him and Bouquet at the moment. But you have to wonder whether that gap could come down. We've only got 6 minutes remaining. Still enough time for a potential twist in the tail, but it's going to be a huge push from Bouquet to get that done. Kevin Seclari has rejoined into P5, of course. He's currently 11.5 seconds behind Victor Barriere as well. There he is. There's that man. Of course, there in the colours of grey in the silver car for Racing Line Motorsport. And he's had a great drive in the McLaren. into P5, and he's got a nice healthy gap between him and Mazur, who's down in P6 driving the Lexus. And I have to say, folks, I hope you've all enjoyed the broadcast. We want to hear your driver of the day as well. And I've just seen a comment there, obviously, say Siclari or Pifer. How about we hear driver of the days from you? Who do you think has been the real standout performer in this race in the French Special? It's been a pleasure bringing you all the action. We would like to thank, of course, all the sponsors and, of course, the broadcasting public as well. 1.5 million people across the globe potentially watching here this incredible race for the French Special, and it's a pleasure to have you all on board. And I got to say, Nicholas, it's been a lot of fun commentating alongside you for the first time as well.
Yeah, most definitely. I've enjoyed myself quite a lot, and if one wouldn't know better, one would never guess that this is our first time working together.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure, I have to say. We've seen some fantastic battles, certainly some engrossing moments in this race as we now watch Redoui Massou make his way up through the chicane once again, and there you can see in behind Valentin Barriere as well. But as we certainly count down the final 5 minutes of this race, still plenty of change could happen in the remaining 5 minutes as we now watch Antoine Fleury now in P30. He's got Luis Alexandre in behind, currently 4.5 tenths of a second. That gap seems to be cascading down as well as they round the Dunlop curve. So a potential battle in the offing between these two, as we know witness another battle here between Vincent Granier as well, who's at the midst of Florent Leclerc, who's looking for a way through here. And certainly once again, wheel to wheel, will Leclerc find his way through around the next left-hander, still nose to tail, as we now watch now as Granier still tries to hold on, going the outside line does Leclerc, but cannot find a way around. Certainly still under 0.3 of a second separate them, but that gap is shrinking all the time. And I have to say, Leclerc is looking menacing in the BMW.
Absolutely. Battle of the battleships here, so to say, with the Bentley and the BMW, two of the biggest cars in GT3. And obviously, well, the Bentley is a bit more agile overall. The BMW just has that raw power that it can put over these longer straights here. And we can see they're already slowly closing down again. And now on the brakes, once again, getting close, try to get the car rotated, Florent, and now just get it on the power again, try to get your best run on Vincent, and the two are obviously teammates, so they don't want to take each other out, but still, a position's a position in the end.
It is. Any position counts, or every position gained counts, shall we say. Florent Leclerc now making his way up through the next, and we got a replay here as well, and this of course being Fleury and Luis Alexandre as they come through, and Fleury maybe just riding the curbs again and coming out onto the, blimey, and an unfortunate re-entry, smashes straight into the tyre barrier, just got it all wrong, heading into the gravel trap, and that's certainly not a place you want to be, Nicholas.
And I think that finally decided to end his race there. That may have killed his engine completely, but very sadly, one of the unlucky guys that we've had in this race, but still kept on going, and then 3 minutes before the end, Antoine Fleury sadly completely extinguished his flame. Nevertheless, good showing for Team Fordzilla over here.
It is a tremendous result indeed. Certainly a tremendous performance. Here's Florent Leclerc now, who we're seeing on our screens, just coming around the next right-hander. He's got Vincent Granier still once again ahead of him here, so we're going to witness another battle between the two big cars in the GT category, as we're now watching Leclerc literally ankle tapping each other now, as we're now watching them, as Walter Bill's now on track. Now, what was that? Wowee! Just totally misjudged the corner there.
I think Dorsch may have turned in a bit too late there. Of course, on the rubber line you have the most grip. If you just brake a bit too late there, slide off the rubber line. The marbles, they're just completely unforgiving, and these Pirelli tires create quite a lot of marbles because, as we know from F1, they don't last as long. They provide good grip for as long as they do provide grip, but then marbles and stuff, it happens quite a lot, and get off the racing line and you'll find out where the grip lays, which is, somewhere else.
And that's why you need to keep it in the grey stuff, don't you? Keep it on the track. That is the main thing. And obviously that does help. But naturally, these guys are pushing. They're trying to gain everything they can. There's Vincent Grenier, for example. He's got Florent Leclerc still behind him here as we now watch the replay of what happened. I believe, yes, indeed, William Dorsch. And remember, he was chasing Walter Beals earlier on. And as we were riding on board with the cameras of Walter Beals, and just literally, a bit of a snap there. A serious snap. And that headed him out onto the gravel trap, and obviously rejoins the circuit. Not a lot of traffic, so he's safe to go back on. and he will continue his pursuit of Walter Bills. But there's Vincent Grenier still in P23, and just under 0.5 of a second behind him, Florent Leclerc. And we're coming down to the final minute now and rejoined with Fabien Piffert.
And once again, he's just completely in a league of his own. Well, not completely, because we had a lot of people with very similar pace and obviously a big challenge. But for him, it just all worked out, Great pace, great racing awareness, and fantastic overtake for the lead. And from then on, he just kept on going, and the strategy just worked out perfectly. Bouquet, 4 seconds behind him, but then the next car behind him, 24 seconds. So you could say, how would they say it in tennis? I only know the German phrasing, but game, set, match, that's it.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Nicholas. I think it was a very comprehensive performance, and as we now watch Fabien come round the next left and soon to be around the next right, 15 seconds on the clock ticking away, soon to be 10 seconds. He comes up now towards the Bogan bend, of course, before he reaches the next chicane, and Bouquet is a mighty 4.1 seconds in behind. It's been a tremendous drive, certainly, as he now makes his way through. We are now into injury time, folks. The red numbers on the board, the zeros have sprung into action above as we now see Fabien Piffert come around the next right-hander. And what an exquisite drive it's been. He takes the checkered flag and wins the French Special. And in extraordinary fashion with a mighty lead over Bouquet. But you've got to hand it to him. An incredible performance, Nicholas.
Absolutely fantastic performance from him. Now we have Redouane Massou here, going through the Vélo chicane one last time and through traffic, of course, as well. That is actually... William Dorsch, who had his little excursion there for a moment. But, nevertheless, fantastic drive from him. Redouane Massou maybe outplayed himself a little bit with strategy. Valentin Barrière right behind him, who has actually gained quite a lot on strategy with very ambitious strategy of very long runs. Romain Monti turns it pirouetting over the line, and,
Yeah, this is not the time for donuts, Monty. Not the time for donuts. Indeed. Amazing scenes here at the end of this French Special. But, that's the beauty of this event, as we see Arnaud Saline coming through the chicane as well, with Pedrosini in behind and Chaman coming through as well around the final corner. In fact, a battle lighting up here between, I think, Chaman and Pedrosini as they come around the next right-hander. Or is that a lapped car? I'm not quite sure. I'll have to gather my timing gaps. But Saline crosses the line and will take P27. Exceptional indeed. I have to say, what a phenomenal race it's been, folks. And I have to say, we've been capped off some incredible performances across this field. Who were your standout performances, Nicholas, from a driver's point of view?
Well, quite honestly, with their strategy working out so well, Valentin Barrière actually absolutely fantastic. Then Fabien Piffert, I know that Redouane Massou is not easy to get by, and then to do it around the outside in the humongous Lexus, and then just hold on to it very, very well, and then also just perfectly play it off with strategy. It was just a fantastic drive from him. Everything worked there. And at the same time, though, Redouane Massou, fantastic recovery drive from the strategy that failed, and a very good overtake as well, and very good spatial awareness when Valentin Barrière actually had his little moment up the Schumachers.
Absolutely, but it was Fabien Piffert on the day, an extraordinary performance indeed to cap off a stupendous race. Lots of action from the get-go. Myself and Nicholas were given no rest from the first lap. I have to say, going into turn one, it was hellacious, wasn't it? We had 3 wide situations on many occasions. I have to say, Valentin Barrière was absolutely extraordinary, and that battle towards the end with Masoud as well, who took up that P3 spot. It was truly an inspired performance indeed, though, from Piffert that secured him the win on the day. But again, it was a good performance as well, really, from the real drivers as well, because despite that little late spin excursion, certainly from Romain Monti, he kept it together the whole race. He was in the fight.
Absolutely, and I think if it had worked out a little bit better with him getting through traffic at the beginning, then his lap 1 pit stop strategy could have possibly worked out. Maybe would have ended up a little bit further up, but obviously that's something that plays out throughout the race, and when you're going with an ambitious strategy like that, then it's of course very, very difficult to always calculate everything that'll happen in the future.
Absolutely. We will, of course, be coming up with some driver interviews very, very shortly, folks, and obviously speak to some of the drivers that took part in that race, of course. And I hope you all enjoyed that race indeed. I have to say, very thrilling. And we had such if you look at the time gaps, extraordinary to see that they were still so close to the end, really. If you look at it on paper, Bouquet was only 3.2 seconds behind Fabien Piffet. So Bouquet was carrying a lot of pace towards the end. Was it a case that maybe the pit stop was slightly too late at the end?
Maybe a bit too late, but maybe it was also a case of, also a little bit underestimating the fuel consumption of their cars. So especially the Lexus with a big 5-liter V8, that sucks down a lot of fuel. So maybe, just trying to make sure that the last little bit was enough fuel in the car.
Absolutely. Well, nonetheless, P2 on the day, very respectable. Certainly around the Nurburgring, and especially the challenging circumstances of dealing with numerous cars across the track. It's certainly a very testing situation. But we're just waiting for the drivers to join us in the commentary booth, of course. But amazing to see the variance of moves we saw. I mean, obviously the Dunlop curve, the exits coming out of the Dunlop were obviously key moments as well. Obviously, we saw a couple of times drivers wavering off the track. And it was as expected, really, wasn't it, Nicholas? Certainly a lot of them trying to manage certainly the curbs on the outset. They are very raised. We saw quite a few mistakes out of Dunlop.
Absolutely, and that is just one of the things, it always catches you out. You can drive that track for hundreds of times and still make that mistake simply because you're always pushing on the limit at these parts. You're trying to use all of the track, and when that mistake happens, it's still as deadly as in practice.
It certainly is, and then of course the chicane, which was absolutely venomous on occasions, and certainly caught quite a few people out. But nonetheless, very thrilling to watch. Nonetheless, lots of stupendous overtakes, and obviously under the discolor of night, I was obviously a little bit of concern. How would some of the drivers cope under those conditions? Obviously, lack of visibility, things of that nature. Lots of lights across the track, but they all seem to manage it quite well.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can notice from that, no matter if it's a real driver, influencer, or a purebred sim racer, esports professional, they're all, as it already said, they're all professionals. So adjustments like these, obviously, in a simulator, it's nothing to them right now. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I can confirm we've got interviews ready here for this. After this tremendous race, and we will obviously get started. I think who should we start with to get things underway? We'll start with Fabien Piffet. Should we start with the race winner, Fabien? An extraordinary race, a great victory. It was pretty much a tech race. Talk us through it.
It was a really great race. Didn't get the pole position first, but I wasn't too upset about it because I knew that the other cars were pretty fast. Then got a good start, managed to overtake the Porsche after a few laps. Profited from a little mistake. It was a really nice move, a lot of respect between us. It was really nice. And then the race was tough. We basically needed to pull like quali pace laps on every lap for almost 2 hours because Albon was really having an insane pace, and it was just like I just needed to push to the absolute limit during 2 hours to keep him a bit behind until the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, it's inspired to hear that you've gone for that, pushing it to the limit. Of course, myself and Nicholas were just talking about some of the race curbs, and obviously there's a huge danger when you're almost chucking the cars through the curbs. Was there ever any fear in the back of your mind that this could go wrong? If we land one on the curb, does that ever cross your mind as a very competitive racer?
I don't think. No, it's not really crossing my mind like before. Just making sure to hit every apex and just do every corner right, basically, and just hoping that blue flags are going correctly, not doing any weird move that could just result in a crash, basically. And if everything goes all right, then it's all good for the race.
Yeah, I mean, your race management was brilliant, and I think that certainly was a testament to your race win. It certainly was the whole picture, should we say, as with regards to your race. Did you find any issues with back markers? Obviously, with cars that you had to lap, was there ever a moment where things became a little tricky, or did you feel confident right through?
I always feel pretty confident about that. It was a bit tricky at the start of the final stint. I got a lot of back markers. That really slowed me down for a little while, for a few laps, but in the end it was alright. There was no contact with anyone during the whole race, so that's the most important. That was really nice to see.
Absolutely. Anything from yourself, Nicholas? Would you like to?
Absolutely not. You basically asked everything already. Just congratulations to Fabien. Fantastic drive.
Yeah, thanks, and I would like to congratulate as well all the other drivers for their race as well.
Well, thank you ever so much, Fabian. A great drive and an excellent win, and certainly a very humbled character as well, even in victory. So well done, you. I think we'll move on next to. Obviously, I think we've got another man here. We'll go to Bouquet next. Of course, P2 driver Alban Bouquet. I've got to say, it was a testament to your finish. You certainly looked quick towards the end, Alban. Was it a case that you just could not... Well, was it a case you ran out of laps, so I suppose ran out of time? Because you certainly seemed to be closing the gap at the end.
Tu peux me traduire, Fabien?
I will do the translation because French, English. Sorry for that.
Ça va trop vite.
Donc en gros il disait voilà, que c'était une course super serrée.
I apologize, my French isn't brilliant. I do apologize.
I'll do the... No worries, I'll do the translation, it's fine.
Okay.
Donc en fait il disait voilà, donc super course, vraiment une course très serrée de bout en bout, et que malheureusement il t'a manqué un peu de temps à la fin, que tu avais un énorme rythme surtout dans le dernier relais, et que ouais, malheureusement un petit peu à la fin pouvoir venir me rattraper, quoi.
Bah après je pense que t'étais quand même vachement solide, et te rattraper peut-être, mais te doubler sûrement pas, quoi. J'avais pas assez de ressources pour venir te chercher.
Okay. So yeah, he just said that basically he felt that there was maybe a possibility that he could catch me up, but he felt that I was too strong, and that it would have been another pain to try to overtake me.
Did you add that I was too strong, but yourself? No, amazing stuff. Obviously, going through the race, there was a lot of jumbling with the strategy. Strategy was key. How did you feel your strategy worked? And do you think you could have done something a little bit different?
Donc là, il te demande à propos de la stratégie. Est-ce que tu penses que tu avais la meilleure stratégie, la bonne stratégie? Est-ce que tu aurais pu tenter autre chose? Voilà.
Alors, en comparant avec tout le plateau, je pense qu'on avait, parce qu'on était sur la même, hein, je pense qu'on avait la meilleure stratégie quand on voit les écarts de temps. Après, avec, tu veux peut-être traduire là, et après je continue.
Oh, vas-y.
Et bah après, c'est surtout le temps qui est accéléré. On n'avait pas trop le choix en fait par rapport aux pneus, parce qu'il y a réellement un drop à 40 minutes.
Ouais. So yeah, he really said that he felt that he had the best strategy for tonight. By the way, so me and him had basically the same strategy. I think we pitted like at the same lap twice, and he felt that was the best strategy looking at the time, and we were kind of limited though, because there was starting to get a serious drop on the tires and the pressures after about 40-45 minutes in each stint, so we were kind of limited and we couldn't push too far each stint.
Okay, well, anything from yourself as well, Nicholas?
Well, I was basically just a bit too concentrated on trying to understand what's left of my French, what he was saying as well. But yeah, just congratulations once again. And my own personal question to him was, you mentioned the tire pressures dropping off after this 40-45 minute window. Overall, would you say that could have been solved differently with setup, or was that just a thing for tonight with the very unique settings of the faster advancing timescale?
Voilà, là il demande si, si en gros l'histoire des 40-45 minutes par relais, est-ce qu'on aurait pu contrer ça soit en réglant les voitures différemment ou est-ce que c'est vraiment le temps x5 qui
Bah
est
le.
juste trop fort quoi.
On
Ou est-ce qu'on
pouvait,
aurait pu changer ça, faire en sorte de tenir 1 heure.
on pouvait tenir 1 heure, mais le problème c'est la différence de temps entre la fin de ton relais d'1 heure et le début du relais après les 40 minutes. Ça, c'est vraiment là en fait la différence de temps entre la fin du relais de 1 heure et le début de relais des 40 minutes, elle était trop importante pour pousser. Quel que soit le setup, quelles que soient les pressions. Voilà.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, the drop after about 40 minutes was just too high, and even with a different setup, that wouldn't have changed much because it's just how the pressures went down after with how the time was going fast. The drop was just too much, and about 40-45 minutes in, it was pretty much the best point to pit to counter the loss of time.
To our next man, the final man on the podium, I believe, Radouin Massou. And Radouin, what a race from yourself. A great fight, obviously ensued from the get-go, right to the end. Talk us through your race. How did you feel it went?
Thank you very much for organization WPR World Pro Racing. I like this organization on the lot of race. You can do it in a website. You can register in worldproracing.com. So for my race, I have the pace for keep the driver on the front. For my second stint, I make a big mistake, and I lose all my time. So I try to keep the pace, but it's difficult to catch Alban and Fabien Piffet, very excellent driver French. So it's cool for me the podium, and thank you very much all driver participate at this race.
Well, it was an amazing race, certainly from yourself. At the end, the final 10 minutes, you overtook Valentin Barrière. And did you think it would be harder than what it was, or did you find it a challenge? I mean, how hard were you pushing at the end?
At the end, I see Valentin Barrière front of me. So, in the standing front of me, 5 seconds, I think. I see when I see Valentin Barrière go out pit lane, and je réfléchis. Comment on dit je réfléchis en anglais?
I think.
Ouais. I think this strategy was different about me. So I know he haven't the new tires. So when I see pace round after round, I see Valentin Barrière in difficulties, difficult pace. So I take my chance, and he take a little mistake. So I overtake him because his his tire is no good for finish the race. So
yeah, I I think that was what we thought as well. I think towards the end, Nicholas, did you have any further thoughts after that one?
Other than that, quite honestly, that was basically what my question was going to be. So perfectly fine. Yeah.
I feel bad. I'm robbing all your questions. I'm sorry.
It's all good. Don't worry.
No, but congratulations, obviously, to yourself. It was a brilliant P3, Radian. So you deserve a lot of credit for that fight back. Excellent move as well towards the end. Congratulations on the podium.
Thank you very much. Thank you all driver. Thank you all driver take this part for this race. I hope another race like that for next round. So it's good. Thank you very much, WPR World Pro Racing.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Radian. And I got to say, thanks everybody. I got to say, it's been a tremendous race. And Nicholas, any last thoughts on what we just saw?
Well, it's just been an absolutely fantastic 2 hours of racing, and well, I don't say it very often, but this was basically just a constant battle between basically everyone. It's just a completed giant free-for-all, and normally you at least have periods where it dies down a little bit, with the pit stops happening and all that stuff. But yeah, not like this. It was 40 plus cars, and it was just consistent battling. Wherever you looked, there was always something to be found, and it was just an absolute joy to commentate on with you.
And yourself, Nicholas, it was a pleasure. First time, and I'm sure it will not be the last as well. Tremendous stuff indeed. Tremendous stuff indeed. I want to thank everybody, everyone nationwide, worldwide, all you viewers at home for checking us out and certainly watching this broadcast. It was absolutely scintillating. The French special, it certainly was very, very special. We would like to thank as well all the sponsors, of course, Gaming Malta, as well as AMD, HyperX, GT Omega and Thrustmaster for all their support to World Pro Racing, and also the broadcast partners. Big thank you to ESTV, as well as Motorsport.tv and TVM Sport for hosting as well this live broadcast as well. But from us, folks, if you would please leave a like and a subscribe as well to the World Pro Racing channels, and that would be very much appreciated. Your support is ever and more important to us, and we'll look forward to bringing you more live action and live coverage here with us at World Pro Racing. But from me and Nicholas, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.